Hey everyone, and welcome to a daily podcast where you can see us every day for the last 15 days, 14 hours and 31 minutes and 21 seconds. Welcome to the Unhealthy Scratches podcast where we are once again back.
We back
with another one. It's been a couple days, hasn't it? It's been a couple days.
Yeah, just a little bit.
To say the least. I think we went through 1.5 seasons, I think.
I have gray hairs noticeably now, so that's a good update.
Yeah, perfect.
First, I could hide them, but I can't.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe the light will help kind of hide the gray hairs, or will highlight them, which is more likely.
More
so,
likely.
Yes. Welcome to the Unhealthy Scratches podcast, where playoff edition. I don't think we've actually done a playoff podcast before, which isn't saying much because we haven't done many. So, I mean, it is what it is.
We started in the summer before a season and ended pretty much when that season started.
Bro, it feels like it's been so long that I couldn't remember that. I won't lie. And so great job on your memory, case.
Oh, that time is it was a time.
Yep, it was a time. We were a lot further apart than we are now. Actually, yeah, literally. Dang, It's been that long. So why don't we just jump into this pretty much, right? What were you going to say? Yeah. I'll let you finish your sentence, don't worry.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, we're the same province now.
Yeah, right, same province. We're getting closer together, don't worry. We still don't like each other enough.
No.
So, yes, why don't we dive into this? We got a lot to cover because we've had an entire 2 seasons, which we're not going to really focus mainly on the prior seasons, but we are 100% going to focus on this one, mainly for the reason that it's happening right now. And we're just entering playoffs. Playoff time, playoff hockey. We're pretty much when we're recording this, we're on day 2 of playoffs. Most likely by the time this comes up, we're probably day 3 or 4 of playoffs, give or take, which means that everything we talk about is probably not focused on what's happening. Yes. So why don't we just dive right into this and start talking about teams? Cakes, Montreal Canadiens. How do you feel?
I told you before we started that Habs fans are basically saying, "Oh yeah, we improved pretty good this year," and at the same time, we have fifth best odds at the number 1 overall pick. So that's
better than last year
where we were. I think it was pretty much the same.
I think so, yeah, because last year it was Ducks, Chicago, Columbus, and then was it Sharks? And then no, Sharks weren't that bad. Sharks weren't that bad 2 years ago.
I'm just 99% sure when the draft lottery happened, we did not move anywhere in order. I think we stuck in 5th. And got Ryan Backer at 5th overall.
Which has been a growing process, because I guess we wouldn't really expect a lot of those players, like Bedard and some of them, to come in and step right in. Most players don't do that, so it's not expected we'll see him for another couple.
Yeah, the fact Bedard did good in his first year shows how good he is.
It's going to be fun to watch him. But we're not talking about him. We're talking about the Montreal Canadiens. The more important topic.
Yes.
And we'll definitely get more views.
Exactly.
To talk about the Montreal Canadiens. So,
the Montreal placed 8th in the Atlantic Division, a.k.a., if you don't know a lot about hockey, it's dead last in our division.
But they weren't the worst. They weren't the worst.
In the East, we were 15th in the East, not 16th. We were 15th. Sorry to all the Columbus fans.
Get wrecked. Rick Nash ain't there to save you this time.
They had 10 points less than us. Oof. But, we had 30 wins, 36 losses, and 16 OT losses.
That's got to be one of the most. That's got to be one of the most. I think Boston was number 1. With
Islanders have 16 as well.
Okay.
Which is wild.
Yeah, the fact they made it.
Tied for the most OT losses in the entire league. Boston had 15.
Yeah, I knew that.
But that helped them get to 4th in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
and we are still in last in our division. But surefire pick for my season MVP is Nick Suzuki, of course. Top scorer, 33 goals, 44 assists, 77 points, and did not miss a game. Did not miss a game.
Cute.
Cole Caulfield did Cole Caulfield stuff. 82 games, 28 goals, 37 assists. I thought he'd have more goals, but he is definitely not the person I'm most disappointed. That comes in about another minute or two.
Yes, of course. I can't wait. I
Big,
actually don't know what that is.
big surprises. Mike Matheson, defenseman,
Mm-hmm.
scored 62 points, 82 games.
Exactly. Big.
My most improved of the team, no surprise, our golden boy, #1 overall, Uri Slavkovsky, scoring 20 goals and 30 assists for 50 points in 82 games.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot less last year. People were calling him a bust.
Yep.
Now he hit the big 5-0. No busts in Montreal. We've never had a bust before in our lives.
Yeah, I can't
don't
think
look
of,
at Alex Galchenyuk.
Cannot think of
Please
anybody.
don't look at Alex Galchenyuk. But yeah, but the most disappointing for me is somebody I thought would take a big leap, and he very much did not. Josh Anderson.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured.
Whew,
I figured. Oh.
Here's just how he played this year. And I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. Good locker room presence. But David Savard, who our fans have lovingly called a pylon whenever they put him on the first pair, scored 4 more points than him as a defenseman. Hold on, I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh,
I want to
my
see
land.
how many. Josh Anderson played 78 games to score 20 points. How many games did David Savard play to get 4 more than him?
Okay. I'm going to go with 40, actually. Because I'm guessing he played less.
Not that bad. Not that bad.
Okay.
He played 60 games to get to 24
I
points.
may have lowballed it.
A defenseman took 18 less games to score more
Jeez.
than their power forward right wing. Yeah.
Oh my.
Not great.
How?
Very much not great.
Josh Anderson, you were so highly looked upon, especially from last year, and man.
Fun fact though, the Montreal Canadiens have, I believe, 2 players who actually scored a point per game. You want to guess who those 2 guys are?
Point per game?
Yeah. I'm shocked if you got either of them.
Yeah, because they're not going to have played at that many games. I actually don't have any guesses. I'm not sure. You'll have to tell me here.
1, Chicago Blackhawks legend Kirby Dach. 2 games, 2 points.
That's awful.
He got hurt.
Yeah.
Obviously. Very hurt. Second guy, somebody who played the last 2 games of the season. College phenom Lane Hudson. 2 games, 2 points.
My land. Just, Montreal's looking really hopeful right now. Like, their future is bright.
Yeah. Well, Lane Hudson is a really good player. He was like lighting up college hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the college playoffs, he's just like, yeah, I'll play a couple games for the Habs. Got 2 points. Goalies, we had Caden Primo backing up Samuel Montembeault. Finally, he got some NHL action. Pretty mid. Both of them were pretty mid. Caden Primo in 23 games had 8 wins and 9 losses and 4 OT losses. And Samuel Montembeault, 41 games, 16 wins, 15 losses, 9 overtime losses.
That's...
Woo!
Yay.
I'll just make one thing abundantly clear. Until Montreal gets a bona fide starting goaltender, they will not get past 6 in their division.
Mm-hmm. There's no chance in the Atlantic Division, especially above
Not a shot.
all of them. There is
Because
no way.
let me just go through our division real quick. Um, Ottawa has a pretty dicey goalie problem. Jonas Corpusalo, I think, is their best goalie right now.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo does have Dylan Levi. He is young. Uh, Detroit, I believe, has Nedeljkovic and somebody else that I can't think of. Part of me wants to say James Reimer. I feel like I'm wrong, so I'm not going to put that in writing. But then the top four guys, Tampa has Vasilevsky. Toronto, I mean, Ilya Samsonov has been like a good highlight for
Mm-hmm.
them this year. They don't have
Save
they
that
have
little section,
they
that
have
little stint.
they have the worst goalie tandem of the top four teams in our division.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Ooh, you
Boston
know
has the
what?
best.
You know what? Actually, I think you could argue uh, one of the teams in Atlantic this year specifically. If we're talking about other years, no, but this year specifically, I think Tampa. You could argue because as decent as Vasilevsky was, and he wasn't great compared to other seasons, the backup goalie also single-handedly when Vasi was injured plummeted Lightning down to the standings. He couldn't save a
Oh
beast
yeah,
ball. Oh my land, poor guy. He made it to the NHL. You got to be good to make it to the NHL. My land,
true.
he needs more time. He could
But
not be a starter. No way.
you know what saves your team from having a bad goalie tandem? Scoring the most goals in your division. And that's what Toronto did
Yeah.
by uh 12. I had to think for a second.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
I
mean,
can't do math.
when you have the greatest shooter of this era stepping on in, and if you want to say Connor
Si-
McDavid, then ask him why
A
he didn't score
very
anything.
nice 69 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Poor guy. That hurt. That hurt to see. On a
that hurts
side
so
note.
bad.
On a side note, that hurt that he
You
just
couldn't
couldn't.
buy a 70th goal.
But then again, they were definitely guarding him, and the team was trying to get it to him.
And they
So
just
it's
could,
just
and
a
then
shame.
they lose like the last two games or whatever. Couldn't
Last
get a chance at
last
it
four,
after
I
that.
think, in total.
Oof, oof. But
Now,
Boston,
currently, before we actually, because they've lost the last five technically. Yeah.
uh, Boston with 109 points. They had 47 wins, 20 losses, and 15 OT losses.
Not as impressive as
And
last
then
year, but Boston.
Florida,
Boston. Go away.
Florida wins the division with 52 wins, 24 losses, and 6 OT losses at 110 points. That's going to be a precursor for what we're going to be talking later.
Yep. And that is
Um,
why Montreal needs a better tandem.
I
Oh.
hear me out. This is to be the last thing I say about it.
Mm-hmm.
I love both of those goalies. I love them so much. I feel like the fan base really did a disservice to Caden Primo because when he got drafted, they were like, "Oh, this is the next Price." We all know how that happens to goalies when they're touted to be the next Carey Price.
Uh-huh.
And then Samuel Montembeault. He's played very good considering how they acquired him off of waivers
Mm-hmm.
from Florida. He was like the third, if not fourth best goalie on Florida when he was put on waivers.
Mm-hmm.
He's played
Only Florida had worse
better than
goalies.
that,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not, in my personal opinion. Again, I love Montembeault. I remember a game against the Stars where he saved like 60 shots.
Yeah.
That was in the really bad season, obviously, because the defense couldn't block a shot to save the life.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not a starter in this league. He's not. Like,
No.
if Primo doesn't take a good step next year, like a really good step, they might have to look somewhere, honestly.
They will, yeah. There's no doubt about
Um,
that.
I mean, that's basically all the notable stuff about the Habs. Who knows? We'll probably have another top pick because we always do it now because we're not great. But yeah,
Yeah, that's the height of the Montreal Canadiens. Sadness. That's always a motivational. Well,
So
on
tell
the
us about
other,
Vancouver, man.
on the other spectrum, we have probably, if not the most shocking, because no matter how you put it, it's the most shocking thing that happened this season, I think, not just for someone who cheers for the team, but for the entire NHL. Nobody expected the Vancouver Canucks to make the playoffs if they even could, because I think the projected for the Canucks was maybe wild card, if that, was the top that they could achieve. And the Canucks said, oh, that's as high as we can go? Why don't we just get number one in the division and hold on to the number one spot for multiple months?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what happened to the Vancouver Canucks. Their roster
I have
barely
a
changed.
reason for that.
What's your reason?
I have a reason for that.
What's your reason?
For the last like 3 or 4 years, since before everything shut down and teams were playing in front of literally nobody, I was on the Canuck train
In that
for
2020
regular
bubble.
season playoffs. I was like, they're going to crush it. And
They
all
crushed
those years,
something, all right.
they crushed my spirits.
And I think
'Cause I was so high on that team.
that was
And
the
then the
number
one year,
thing.
I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You have me to thank.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I think that was by far one of the most frustrating things about the Canucks, is knowing that they were underachieving to what they potentially could. Now, last year it did make sense because you require three things when it comes to a team. You need some of them to be stellar. You need either a stellar offense or good offense at least, a stellar/good defense, and a stellar/good goalie. You need at least one of them to be stellar and the rest to be at least good in order to even be a viable team to make the playoffs in and of itself. And last year, the Canucks lost the stellar piece. Obviously, their defense was pitiful, especially last year, and this year it's improved. But their goaltending. Never in my life have I really come to terms to the fact that this team lives and dies by Thatcher Demko. There is no doubt in my mind that Thatcher Demko is the key piece to this. And though I can't call him a Carey Price because he's American and I am relating to the Montreal Canadian player, don't worry, he's been through a lot this season. And
the next Ryan Miller.
Before. The next Ryan Miller. Yes, American-born Thatcher Demko is gotta be one of, if not the most important X factor of the Canucks. And it was really proven this season when the Canucks beat the Oilers 8-1 in the first game. Now, at the time,
I remember that game.
We didn't know how bad the Oilers were going to start off, and we're going to definitely talk about a little bit of that when we talk about the playoff tree, or our predictions at least. But oh my land, I did not expect it. And for the first 20 games, I was like, nah, the Canucks are going to turn around and turn into what they were. The Canucks can't be this. It's all flukes. It's all flukes. And about 20 games in, they weren't the top because at the time Vegas was number one, but Canucks had held the second position for a long time, and I started to get that little feeling inside. You know, I don't know if Cakes remembers the feeling.
Hope.
It's the feeling of hope. It's like, is this actually a good team? Is this actually happening? Oh my land, this team might actually be good. And then they'd go on like this little string where they would lose a few games and I'd be like, there's the Canucks I know. That's the Canucks I remember. And then they just decide to, start winning again. And it's like, what kind of a fever dream am I in right now? Definitely shocked the NHL that the Canucks even made the playoffs, let alone being the number one seed in their division. They didn't end off as number one. They ended off in 6th in the division with 109 points. And actually, they got to 50 wins, which is the first time they've done that since 2011-2012. And Canucks fans remember that year as, why did you get the President's Trophy? Why did you do that? Why? You cursed yourself and then lost to Boston.
Dear God, why? Dear God, why?
That was a very painful year. Hopefully not any repeats here. Please. But yes, Canucks came in, and I've already talked a lot about Demko. He ended off with a .918 save percentage, which I'm going to be honest, It seems like, I don't know if this is true or not, it seems like the save percentages for most goalies were very low this year compared to other years.
Well,
I
yeah,
feel like because
scoring is just like, whew.
Demko ended up second league-wide save percentage with a minimum of 30 games played.
Yeah.
He was second, and there's one goalie that's a little better in that stat, and we're not going to focus on that because we're not talking about that. But he also ended up with fourth with goals against average with games played.
Yeah.
At least 30 of them. And so he ended up with 35 wins, 5 shutouts, I think tied for second for most shutouts. 245 goals against average. Unbelievable. And there's so much to talk about this team. Though I do put Demko as the best and the most quintessential player for the Canucks, MVP for me goes to a guy that everyone basically just wrote off. And no, it's not Brock Besser, actually.
No, that's not
Brock Besser did have an amazing comeback year. We knew it was in him as a Canuck fan base. We saw him in his rookie season. We knew what he was capable of. And going through that drought the last few years has been really tough to see, knowing what he could do and knowing how good of a goal scorer he is. But I am going to give it to the man that got the contract for the MVP. There is no doubt in my mind that this man has earned his contract with 103 points, the most for the Canucks this season. JT Miller. I was on the bandwagon. I will not lie. Yeah. I was on the bandwagon. I was so frustrated with Canucks because I didn't understand why they got rid of their captain and instead signed a man who has anger issues essentially on the ice, it seems, who able...
in practice one time shouted, "I don't know what the hell we're doing."
The man has been... to say that there's been a toxic environment around him over the last couple seasons has been made apparent ever since last year happened, when the Canucks just could not. Last team last year, by the way, to get a single win. And now number one. What on earth? But JT Miller has been a huge part of that. 37 goals, 66 assists. 7th player in franchise history to reach 100+ points. And is 9th for scoring. And it's also his career high in goals, yeah, of course. And it's just crazy to think that he's turned around essentially his entire season and perspective of all the Canucks fans. Now, it's not to say that we have forgotten essentially those times, because it is a shame we still lost somebody out of that. And if I'm correct, Bo did have a pretty good season this season. He wasn't too bad whatsoever. It is a shame to see one of them have to disappear, but I'm glad to know that JT had such a bounce back season, but not only such a bounce back season, the number one point scorer for Canucks. Like, over a point a game, too. From a man who barely, he got maybe 30 goals last year, but he didn't get that many points comparatively to this year, and he's turned it around, is what it is. And so I give the MVP to JT Miller, and I know Demko, my beloved, still the best player there. JT has had such an improving season. There's only a couple other players I will talk about a little bit. Quinn Hughes, named captaincy this year. That one surprised a few people. You can kind of see why it was given to Quinn, and he's really proved it over this year. The man is a dynamic offensive defenseman. First in NHL scoring by a defenseman. 17 goals, 75 assists, 92 points.
75.
And you ready for this stat?
Hit me with it.
He is the single season points and assist record, franchise record by a defenseman. He has a record. In his first year as captaincy, he broke it. And that makes me so sad, because it made me realize how not offensively defensive any decor has been in the Canucks franchise.
Yeah.
But also it shows how crazy Quinn Hughes is, because not only that, he broke the record as the fastest defenseman to 200 points in the NHL when he got to his 200 points. And now he is, what was the stat? He's the third to do it in a certain time span for 200 points as well, with names like Bobby Orr He's getting compared to guys like Bobby Orr at this point in his career, and it's
Pretty sure
like,
the other one's Kale
how?
McCarr, which is hilarious.
I don't know if it is Kale McCarr. Uh,
For the youngest to a
I
certain
wish I
amount of
had the
points,
stat.
I
I
kind of
wish I had
think
the
it is.
stat. But he is the fastest defenseman in getting in his points to 200 points
That's wild.
and on, and it's
So wild.
unbelievable to know that that's who we have on our team. And yes, Jack Hughes is looked at as probably being the better of the three Hughes, but you can't write off Quinn Hughes, especially for what he did this
No,
season.
exactly.
And the last one, obviously, probably the biggest relief for Canucks was Elias Pettersson, especially that signing. After the signing, he did dwindle down quite a bit. And honestly,
Yeah.
a lot of the big guys did, except for JT Miller. Besser was still in there scoring, but Pettersson kind of drifted off a little bit near the ending. But he still had such an impactful season that it can't be completely written off, because he was a part of the Canucks' little sprint to victory at the beginning of the season, especially those 10-goal games. Oh, I miss them so much. Why can't every hockey game be that easy?
I don't know, that was the last game for the Habs in their really bad year. They beat the brakes off of, I think, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
10-2 or something like that.
Now,
like 10, yeah, it was 10-2.
yeah.
Carey Price's last game.
Yeah, and then obviously I think I should talk about, before I talk about who the biggest disappointments were, I do have to talk about the coach, Rick Tocchet. He deserves the Jack Adams Award. There is no question about it. There is zero question. He
would probably win it if Jim Montgomery didn't exist.
Yes, he was a coach that directed a team essentially that was so blinded by whatever was on them, whatever drought they had, whatever problems they were facing. He steps on in, and I'm not going to write off like Boudreau. Boudreau did a great job, and it's sad the way that he left. Canucks management is a whole different story of, you guys got lucky that the Canucks were good this year. That's it.
Yeah.
But Rick Tocchet has brought a team to the best that they can be at this moment in time. So that's the good of Canucks. And there's still other players like Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland that have been low-key big players. But talking about disappointments, and I am going to talk about a player that is no longer on the Canucks. That was quite disappointing this year because he was traded. But there is another player I do have in mind, and definitely the two biggest disappointments were Andrei Kuzmenko from last season as well, because he got the most points, if I'm correct, from last season to barely doing anything this season. And he was then traded, so I wouldn't focus on him too much, as the guy that they traded him for, Elias Lindholm, has done nothing. He has provided nothing for the Canucks. And it was to the point I couldn't believe that it was happening for what the Canucks gave to get Lindholm. Now, I understand why they gave quite a bit, because that's just the GM and how it works. He just goes all in for a piece. And I wasn't mad about it at the time, because Lindholm was a good depth piece and Canucks needed depth. They had depth when Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland were actually on the third line at one point. And at one point in the season, Canucks had the greatest depth. In the playoffs, there's a few that, might have bypassed some of the salary cap rules, whether you agree with it or not. I don't think Canucks
Vegas
have the biggest depth anymore because of that.
Yeah.
But Elias Lindholm was meant to be that center depth piece, because you had Miller, who has the best face-off record for Canucks, and then you have Pettersson, who is just an all-around franchise player.
Yeah.
And Lindholm was supposed to be that piece that helps the depth out. And the first game happened. He scores 2 goals. Great job. Was really excited at that time. And then he just kind of did nothing.
Yeah.
We're not going to say that it's a bust because of the fact that playoffs still happen. And if we look at evidence from last year, Bobrovsky happened. He wasn't great last year. And then he enters playoffs and he becomes a whole different beast. And playoffs do that kind of thing. And so I'm not going to say that Lindholm is a bust yet. However, he's a rental. We're not keeping him next year. It's obvious we're not keeping him next year. if he doesn't do something in this playoffs, there's no doubt that Calgary wins out of that exchange for everything that they gave. It's not as bad as Tanner Jeannot trade. That one was still one of the most baffling ones. But Lindholm has provided nothing that was necessary. What we need is a depth player that can win faceoffs. That would be nice. And that doesn't have to score points. That's not his job as a depth piece. But you need to be able to shut down. You need to be able to stop anything and do something that involves points as well. Again, not a goal per game or a point per game, but to produce something more. It's been a lot of inadequacy is the best I can say. And it's a real shame that so far that's how it's worked out. Hopefully in the playoff season, he'll turn it around along with Pettersson kind of boosting it back up there. I have no doubt for Pettersson. And there needs to be something that happens, though, with Lindholm. No doubt in my mind.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I will talk about before we move on to the next topic, just because we've already spent so much wonderful time on two wonderful teams, equally as good as each other.
So equally.
We believe. We believe. There were a lot of players, actually, that have a career high in points. I will mention that. Besser, Joshua, Sam Lafferty. That blows my mind that Sam Lafferty has been that good. Niels Höglander, big name that I think is going to be wonderful for the Canucks later on, and right now especially, but he's going to grow into a big player. And Filip Hronek with the hardest shot in the Canucks in a game.
5 mile.
Which was crazy. What was it? 102.3 in a game. He shoots a shot early on in the season. It's not the record in the ending. I don't remember the defenseman that ended up shooting harder, but the fact that he just...
I don't know about this year.
But... He literally almost beat Petey's record last year for hardest shot in a competition in a game.
This is hilarious.
Oh my land. But definitely the name I want to talk about last is Casey DeSmith. Because when Demko ended up getting injured, Casey DeSmith had to fill a huge role, and we found out the limits to him. We know what his limits are, and it was pretty obvious because the Canucks ended up going on a little bit of a slump near the ending of the season, which is why they ended up not being as high in the full-on standings, but they almost lost out on their first position in the division to Edmonton. Yeah. Now, I will say that he does come in clutch. Casey DeSmith does his job as a backup goalie wonderfully. He even got one shutout, if I'm correct, at least, in one of his first games, actually. And he does a great job as a backup. As a number one goalie, he is unusable, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's not because he's necessarily too bad, but you can tell he's nervous. I remember there was one game near the ending, one of the last Vegas games, where one of the defensemen, we won't mention any names, bit the dust, and it went on a breakaway. And he came up with a huge save to then panic while he's trying to cover the puck. He goes to slide his paddle to get the puck, to get in his glove, and he hits the puck too hard, misses it with his glove, and sends it to the other team, who pops it in.
Yep, I remember
that. Of course that's going to happen. And that was 3 shots in that game? But he definitely deals with the yips, and I understand that he definitely had to fill some big shoes, because Demko, whether or not you believe it, he is a top 3 goalie in this league this season, no doubt. And I do believe that in the entirety of the league since he's come in, he's a top 5. There's no question about it. He's had a terrible team in front of him. Cue the last year photo.
Problems.
Right? Cue the last year photo of when they were on the PK and there was 3 Canucks players all diving in because they trust their goalie and end up knocking off his glove because they all pile him up, and he makes a huge save, sure. But Demko has had such a bad team in times, and it's not necessarily they're bad, it's because they're in a slump, yes, whatever it is on it. Without him, the team is not getting anywhere, and it was proven because of that injury. I'm excited to see what they do in the playoffs, though. DeSmith, still trust you fully as a backup, not as a main. I have no problem with him being on this team, though. whatsoever. And that, I think, pretty much sums up the Canucks season, which is they're in playoffs. They're against Nashville. They've earned their spot.
Yeah.
And I really hope they win the Cup. But that's just because I'm a Canucks fan.
They have the best chance in a while.
They have, out of all the Canadian teams, they're the highest rated. Whether that means that they have the best chance with not having as much playoff practice. See, that's where it gets interesting because, and I know I said this would be the last one. I'll be really quick, don't worry. This is what makes it interesting, is that they don't have that much playoff experience. But if 2020 proves anything, they went head-to-head to a superior Vegas Golden Knights. Superior. They were just better in every single facet. They ended up winning the, I think it was against Minnesota in the little stupid playoff round that they had that was basically, hey, we don't know where to put everyone, so we're just going to say this. I didn't like it, but that's just
25 teams battle it out for the playoffs.
It's not that it was a bad idea. It's just that it's like, kind of takes some of the fun out of it. Whether or not the Canucks even deserved to be there at that time, who knows? I didn't actually know where they were in the standings. I'm glad they made it, but then they took on the Stanley Cup champions and beat them quite easily, actually. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think it was Game 7. I think it was before Game 7. But they ended up beating the St. Louis Blues, who were a weaker team, sure, but they were the Stanley Cup champions. And they beat them. And then they went against Vegas, completely out of their league. The team was still in the drought. Besser wasn't able to do much. And they didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
Like, they had a bunch of young guys that had never been to the playoffs. And then somehow they brought it all the way to Game 7 and lost by 1 goal. Thatcher Demko ended that playoffs with a .975 save percentage.
Yeah.
They got obliterated in the shot category. And they
both of our teams overperformed that year.
Like, absolutely. They nearly took out a superior Vegas Golden Knights. And that's why I think that we can't necessarily underestimate Canucks solely due to the fact that they've proven in one season of being in the playoffs since 2015, though the bubble season, I don't know if any of us count it, but Thatcher Demko had never been in the playoffs, and he comes in and decimates. Does wonderful work. And if it was due to the fact that the Canucks had goal scorers at that time, which they do now, and they have center depth, hopefully, and they have a great defensive core, great depth on the wings, I think they have a legitimate shot. So,
speaking about playoff shots,
let's get right into this bad boy. I've talked enough.
We've each done brackets, official brackets, or at least I've done an official bracket. I don't know how.
I did an official bracket. Okay, I understand that I actually have a team in this time, and there will be bias, most likely. I do not care.
But Matthew, how do you see the Dallas-Vegas series going?
By far one of the toughest series to kind of go against, because you have the best Western team versus the Stanley Cup champions that have a lot of depth that they have in place. I don't think there's a doubt that this is going to 7 games. I don't think there is. These guys met in the 3rd round multiple seasons.
I 100%.
And both times, I don't know. Vegas won the last one, but I think Dallas.
Vegas won the last one.
Yeah, Vegas won the last one, obviously, because they won the cup.
Part of me thinks Dallas won this.
I think Dallas has won against them too, so it's a pretty even matchup, which is terrible to say, because it's like, Dallas, you got the first seed, you're the best Western team, and your reward is Vegas.
It's the Stanley Cup champions.
I don't know. I don't know if that's very good, guys. But without diving in too much, because we do want to make sure that we kind of get through it, and we'll talk probably more about teams later on. I do think that this 100% is going to go to the Stars. I think the Stars are going to bounce back from last year, and they're going to take out Vegas. Because Vegas, though they have a lot more depth, Dallas is just on a whole other level of Dallas. This is the best Dallas
Yeah.
we've ever seen. And Vegas
Since
is
they were in
not.
the Stanley Cup Finals that last.
Yeah, and Vegas
Yeah.
is not the best version that we've seen. Aiden Hill has been injured a few times, yes. He started off unbelievable at the beginning of the season, and then he dropped off. Logan Thompson's been good, yeah, but Aiden Hill has not quite been to what he was last playoffs. It doesn't mean he won't return to it, but he hasn't been that well. And also with all the players that are returning back, a lot of them are going to have a little bit of rust. Mark Stone's been out for so long. Petrangelo's been out for quite a bit. I think there's going to be a little bit of rust.
I think Petrangelo's still going to be out for a bit.
Yeah. So I think that rust is going to hurt Vegas early on in the series, and in the ending it will take them out of it. I think Dallas has this one. What do you think about it?
I agree 100% with everything you just said, and I will add, I do believe the one thing that's going to put it over the edge for Dallas out of everything is going to be Jake Ottinger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are using him as the reason why they're doubting Dallas because he hasn't been
himself.
Amazing this year.
Hasn't been himself.
But if playoffs Jake Ottinger can teach us anything, I believe he's going to go on an absolute heater. I don't think any of these games are going to be blowouts.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Jake Ottinger is going to stand on his head and make the saves that Dallas needs to pull out a Game 7 win and move on to the second round.
And that's honestly what makes that series kind of interesting, especially, is that you have two goalies that have higher potential than what they're achieving right now at this moment against each other. And whoever wins is going to get the boost.
Yeah.
Most likely.
And it's not like people are like, well, you're choosing the defending Stanley Cup champs to get kicked out in the first round. That happened last year.
And the year before, I think. No, sorry, I lied.
No.
I lied the year before. I was thinking about the Blues is why.
Yeah. Because, like...
obviously, the Lightning won
the year
back-to-back.
after Tampa won their second cup, they still beat the Leafs.
Mm.
And then the year after that, the Leafs beat them. But that was the same year when Colorado got beat by Seattle.
Which was crazy.
It was bananas. But yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
What about the Winnipeg-Colorado series? I feel like we have different ideas on it.
I think we might. We'll find out at the ending of this one. But I don't believe this is going to 7 games. I do believe that this one will go in 6 games. I think this is a 6 games one. The Winnipeg Jets have been on fire. The Avalanche have been on the biggest drift, though. On the biggest losing streak. What was it? 3-6-1, I believe it is. The Jets aren't the hottest team, no, but they've been on such a high. They were third in their division in like the last 10 games to rocket up to second, and the only reason why they didn't get it is because Dallas is being Dallas.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. The second coming of Connor Hellebuck, everyone was talking the year before, trade him, get rid of him. Well,
I was so on that trade.
Wow. Of course you were. You wanted him. Everyone wanted him.
Yeah.
Hellebuck could have gone anywhere. And boy, the Jets are happy that they kept him. Because he is... If Demko is not the number 1 goalie, Hellebuck is this season. There's no doubt that it's a battle between those two goalies this season because of how unbelievable they've played. Hellebuck, though,
Don't forget that Shesterkin.
Shesterkin's been really good as well, yeah. Shesterkin's been really good as well. Hellebuck, though, I do believe is probably... This hurts to say. Hellebuck is the number 1 goalie right now. There's no doubt in my mind right now.
This year, definitely.
This year, he is the number 1, and I do blame it on injury. I do blame it on Demko getting injured. But I do believe that he has been the most consistently best goaltender this season. And that is why I believe that it'll come down to goaltending in this game, because both teams have offense. A lot of it. You have McKinnon, you have Makar, you have Rantanen, underrated. Then for the Jets, you have all of their players. And the defense, stellar on both sides.
You didn't name any of them.
I didn't name any of them. I'm trying to speed through this. I apologize. I'm trying to speed through this. That's why. I'll let you name them. It's for you. You have all of these huge players. Kyle Connor. How does that make you feel? You feel better? Kyle Connor?
That was one.
Kyle Connor. There you go. I'll name one. I wanted to mention Rantanen, that's why. And you can't miss Nathan McKinnon. Yeah. And Cale Makar's... he's not the best defense. But you have a stellar offense against stellar offense. You have a good defense against good defense. And that's why I think it's going to come down to goaltending. And when it comes to goaltending, are you choosing Hellebuck or Georgiev? And I think it is no question that Hellebuck is topping Georgiev. Jets in 6 games. Round 1.
This is where we do
Avalanche is getting kicked. First round.
This is where we do differ. Quite a bit, actually.
I can't wait to hear.
Quite a bit. I feel like the West is going to be decided, in my opinion, by offensive excellence.
Mm-hmm. It's been a high scoring season.
Very high scoring. Not only do I not think Winnipeg's going to beat Colorado, I feel like for some reason, I don't know if the defense drops and Connor can't compensate. Not only do I think Colorado moves on, I think Winnipeg only wins 1 game.
Wow, you thinking 5? So just like 2 years ago,
Colorado's offense is that stacked, and I think they're underrated defensively. People are like, well, didn't they just trade like Samuel Girard?
Mm-hmm. They got weak.
Either him or Bowen Byram. I can't remember which one they traded to Buffalo.
I think it was
Casey Middlestat. Let me add.
Mm-hmm.
They have a slowly resurging Jonathan Drouin, Habs legend.
Mm-hmm.
They have playoff hero Arturi Lehkonen, Habs legend. But you have somebody who will most likely is in like the 3 to 4 pronged battle for the Hart Trophy in Nathan McKinnon.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were with McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen. People forget about Gabriel Landeskog, their captain.
The buff. That's what I will say.
Come on.
If Landeskog ends up coming back in the first round, I think that can change the dynamic because of the buff, the morale buff. Like, there's no doubt that's going to be a thing.
And the guy's probably still in the locker room in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but him on the ice...
You need your captain in the locker room.
Yeah, him on the ice leading the team, though, will definitely change.
But yeah.
So you say...
So we did differ. We did differ. I'm saying Colorado in 5. I feel like we will be pretty similar in this next round.
Yeah, I will. I still do think Jets, even with Landeskog. I think if Avalanche do get past the first round, with Landeskog being there, I think that the Avalanche will go farther than second round, but I still stand by the fact that I do think Jets will beat them. This is going to be great to talk about. It's wonderful. Oh, it's been so long.
I think we have the same pick. I don't know if in as many games.
I think I might end up with more games, honestly. Vancouver Canucks against the Nashville Predators. I don't think there is a doubt in my mind. Both these teams have been... Their last 10 games have been kind of 5-4-1, 4-5-1, about the same. Predators have been a little worse, but the Preds did have that stunt where they went 13-0-2 in 15 games to claw their way back literally into the playoffs. They were not even going to make it at the time. And they took out, who was it? At the time, was it Arizona that got kicked out? Poor Arizona. I think it was Arizona that got kicked out.
So?
Yeah. So blame Nashville on Arizona not ever being able to lift a cup. Rip Phoenix, rip Atlanta, rip whatever other team you got in your head. But
we'll get on that later.
I think that there is 100% going to be a bias in this one, but at the same time, it's because I do believe it's true. I think the Canucks are going to win this one, just with Demko in and of itself being great. I've already talked about Canucks a lot, so I'm not going to go too much into them. As much as Nashville has great defense, probably their best thing, and Saros has really bounced back from the beginning of the season, I think Canucks take this one just because they have more offensive prowess and they have the goaltending to back it up and a decent defense. I think they take it in 6. That's what I think. Now, let's see how different the game is from it.
I also picked Vancouver.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why. I have the Nashville Predators list of players. Everybody talks about UC Saros, Doug goalie. Roman Yossi, the defenseman. Philip Forsberg, underrated offensively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me just rhyme off some of the other names. The first name mentioned after those three is a right wing named Luke Evangelista. Tommy Novak.
Well, big
Old
names.
as the Hills, Gustav Nyquist.
Oh, right.
Jason Zucker. Jason Zucker. He's not bad.
Definitely.
Cody Glass. Jeremy Lauzon. Leafs legend Tyson Barrie.
Tyson Barrie, right?
Habs legend Michael McCarron. They have Luke Shen,
Yeah.
who
That's
he's a great
that's
seventh defenseman.
Leafs legend and Canucks legend. Luke Shen.
Ryan O'Reilly. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. It's
But
like they have
my,
depth pieces, but they don't have the main.
in my humble opinion, Vancouver will show Nashville that there are levels to this. Vancouver in 5.
5. The one thing I am worried about, though, is that Canucks aren't the biggest team. Dakota Joshua does exist, and Connor Garland has done a great job in his spot, and yes, the fourth line exists.
Nashville will have to beat the brakes off of your guys' players to win this series.
And I think there's potential that they do and lose, but I think Canucks are going to walk out of that a little bit worse for wear. More so than normal.
I do agree with that. Whether they win or lose, Vancouver would be pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think they will win.
I think that's, for a lot of people I have seen, that's one of the picks. And I'm not saying it because it's my team. I'm saying out of all the 3 options we've mentioned so far, this is probably the clearest. So far. There are clearer ones. Don't worry. Just because I'm a Canucks
fan. The last first round Western matchup, Oilers against Kings.
Oilers and Kings.
Bowl.
I think that this is wonderful, that this has happened for the 3rd year in a row. And going to be honest, I think the outcome is going to be the exact same. Connor McDavid got 100 assists. It just proves that even when Connor McDavid cannot score goals, he's still an absolute threat. Still an absolute unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he didn't get 154 points.
And he still gets 100 points this
year. Yeah. He by his assists alone, he has just decimated everything. And to know that he's the 4th in history to do it, and not the only one this season, is ridiculous.
That's hilarious.
But he has done incredible things, and that's one player, Zach Hyman. 50 goals out of a man that everyone just wrote off. 50 goals. When Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid were doing absolutely nothing at the beginning of this season, Zach Hyman was still there, putting in the work. And yes,
so good.
To fail to mention that the Oilers had that little stint at the beginning is an understatement, because they managed to get the 2nd most wins in a row, 16.
Yeah.
To claw their way back and be 2nd, nearly 1st in their division. Very close. And just waltz in, essentially. And then you mentioned the Kings, and it's like, well, who do they have that are big names? Cam Talbot has done a great job, especially at the beginning of the season. The Kings were looking really well, and then they just were hills and valleys. Bunch of waves.
Yeah.
They play good at one week, they play horrible the next, and they just went on a stint. And they almost got wild card. At the very ending, they squeeze in, but I think because of how wishy-washy they are, even if they were to get past the first round, they're not making it to the Cup. They don't have what it takes and the consistency that it takes to make it. And because the Oilers have that more consistency, yes, their goaltending has been mediocre at best. I think the Oilers are taking this in 6.
I 100% agree. Down to the pick and the number of games. I feel when your 2 best names on your team haven't exactly been the most relevant in the last 5 years. Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty are old. And yeah, you could say Philip Deneau a couple years ago went to the Stanley Cup Finals with Montreal. People are legitimately saying that he will shut down Connor McDavid, I think Edmonton would be like, yeah, we're not letting the last couple years fly. We're going on
Mm-hmm.
whether you want us to or not. Edmonton in 6. The only reason I don't have it in less games is because of how good LA has been defensively
Mm-hmm.
in
Definitely.
through every play. Um, but yeah, easily for me, Edmonton moves on. Um, we'll flip flop order. I'll start with you. And what I think will be some of the most must see hockey of these playoffs is the
Mm-hmm.
Battle of Florida, which
Yes.
I have,
Most exciting first round, without a shadow of a doubt.
which I have Florida in Game 7. I feel like they've proven in the regular season that last year was not a fluke, even though it looked legitimately fluky.
Mm-hmm.
They come back and place first in the most stacked division in the entire NHL. They faced Tampa Bay, who, yes, they won back-to-back cups. They got, you guys just talked about a guy who scored 100 assists. Kucherov did the same thing. Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
also they make Kucherov mad. He's a liability. He will make the
Yes.
most egregious penalties known to man. All they have to do is get under his skin. And if last year is any proof, Florida is next to maybe Boston is the best team at getting under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, like what they did to Toronto after their such high after finally getting over the hump against Tampa Bay and winning their first playoff series since 2004.
Yeah.
And then they waltz into Scotiabank Arena and we're like, we're gonna beat you in 5. We're gonna yell in
Oh.
your rookie goaltender's face when we score to win the series. We're gonna injure Matthew Nyes blatantly, and I don't even think they got called for that.
No, no. But
Like
then
we're gonna
again,
have
when it
your
comes to
number,
playoffs, you're gonna have missed calls. There's already been
and
some in the 2 games that were played.
exactly, and like plus they have players like Matthew Tkachuk who will play through the playoffs with a broken sternum.
Mm-hmm.
His brother had to put his pads on for him because he couldn't move.
Yup.
I think Florida beats them in 7. I think it's gonna be electric. But I this was one of the for me, even though it's a game 7, it was one of the easiest picks for me. It was the easy. It was the easiest. I shouldn't say it's easy. It was the second easiest of these. You'll
Yeah,
see
yeah, you're
my
right.
easiest
It's
one later.
yeah, the easiest is to come still, of course.
I'm
Um
actually going to flip flop. Actually, you go first for this series. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm
I
excited.
I I will
I got
say
hot takes.
that yes, of course. I will say that at the beginning of the season, it was looking like it was a fluke for the Panthers. Just because they didn't have the greatest start, especially with Matthew Tkachuk.
Hmm.
But Sam Reinhart being second for goals. Like you
He's a
wouldn't expect that. You
menace.
would not expect that name to be the guy that has the second most goals this season. Yes, Matthews absolutely dominated in the goals category, but Sam Reinhart was second. Like that's
So
still
good.
super impressive with 50 plus goals. I think it was
So
58
good.
or 59 in the ending. I'm not entirely sure what it was on the dot, but I know it was high 50s. That
Hmm.
he comes in and then Matthew Tkachuk since January has some of the highest points in that time compared to the NHL, and it's like they're ready to go. They
Yeah.
are raring to go. And Lightning, yes, they have Kucherov, did wonderful. Vasilevsky has not been performing like was has been mentioned prior. And when you think about it, name
Same
other
as last year too.
players, name other players that are doing well enough to even make it past the first round. Because Braden Point isn't quite there. Steven Stamkos isn't quite there. The only guy you can mention is Kucherov. And if you're depending
Yeah.
on one guy, which guess what? There's a team that we've mentioned prior that used to do that, and it
Hmm.
didn't work, even if he's the best player in recent time, Connor McDavid, it doesn't work with one player alone. And I do agree. Panthers are taking this one, but I think it's in 6.
You think it's a 6?
I think the
Okay.
Panthers are going to take it because Panthers are going to want revenge for 2 years ago.
I was
think Panthers are gonna be
debating
bloody.
between 6 and 7, but I really do feel like Tampa Bay, it's going to be like, and I know you probably barely ever watched any wrestling, but there was a match, I want to say either WrestleMania 26 or 27. It was The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, going up against the streak. If he loses against The Undertaker, he retires.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how many times The Undertaker would beat the tar out of him, he would slowly crawl up and make a fight. But in the end, The Undertaker put him out of his misery like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
That's how I think
do
it's
think
going to be.
I do think it's going to be like that as well. And one thing that I forgot to mention, at least, and one of the biggest points as to why I do think it's going to be Florida, Tampa's missing core defensemen. Tampa's defense
That's another point.
is not great because of Sergachev not being there. And I understand he's in practice right now. Like, he could be back in the next week. That's not going to be soon enough. It's just not.
Yeah.
I hope he gets better as quick as possible. I still don't think it's not. I don't think it's going to be in time. And he really shouldn't even bother to attempt to push too far. If they make it second round, then sure. But I don't think it's going to happen because they're missing core defensemen. And if Florida is known for anything, it's to hurt you.
Yeah.
It's to pummel you. It's to chip
so
at you
bad.
slowly but surely. And if you are missing key defenders, you're already
You're
down.
done.
It's not looking good. And even if you do get past the first round, you won't survive the second round because you got beat to a pulp.
Exactly.
So why don't we move on to the next one? I don't know which one you want to step into next. I'll let you decide for that one.
I'm leaving the other Atlantic Division one for the very last of the first round because I have opinions.
I can't wait then.
So we are going to leapfrog to
the
Metro meeting of the New York Rangers, President's Trophy winners, against the Washington Capitals.
I wonder if this is the easy one.
This is the easy one. Because...
Sorry, Caps fans. In
Shesterkin, when he wants to, he is the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Artemi
Definitely a top
Panarin,
3 at the minimum.
Yeah, at minimum. Artemi Panarin, over 120 points this year. Breadman made bread. Mika Zibanejad, he's always good. Adam Fox, perennially Norris, at least nominated. At least a finalist.
Yeah.
Not only do I think the New York Rangers is coming out on top, I think it's a sweep. I think they sweep the Washington Capitals.
First sweep.
Their defense is old. Their Ovi is aging. There are 2 goaltenders. We talked about one of the goaltenders, Darcy Kemper, Stanley Cup winner with Colorado Avalanche. Great. Perfect. Guess who is their other goaltender is?
Old man Jenkins.
Charlie Lindgren.
Who hasn't been too bad, though. He hasn't been too shabby, I will say. You're still against the Rangers. I'm not going to denounce that one at all.
When he was a Hab, when they went on their 2014 run, they had 2 injuries to goaltender, and he still missed games.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad he was. Yes, he's overperformed this year. He's been doing good. But this is the President's Trophy winning New York Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the President's Trophy winners never win the Stanley Cup.
It's rare, to say the least.
I do not care. They are sweeping the Washington Capitals. It's not your year, kid. Carolina here.
You
It's not
guys
your
won a
year.
cup already. I do agree with the
What do you
fact that the Rangers are beating the Capitals. I will say the Capitals did earn a spot here. They did have to fight for it. Yes, Philadelphia pulled their goalie to make it happen.
Columbus also swept the Tampa Bay Lightning. Geez.
Yeah. So it's not to denounce that the Capitals don't deserve to be in the playoffs because they made it here.
Mm.
They definitely don't have the gas for it. They don't have the team. As much as I could say Lindgren has really helped the Capitals, Shesterkin is the better goalie. There's no question about that. And in order for the Capitals to have a chance at even getting past the first round, they have to play eons above.
Yeah.
It's not going to look good for the Capitals. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, though. I do think that they'll pick up at least one win. So I will say that the Rangers are going to take it, but in 5.
Okay.
I do think that they could steal a win, probably a home
Sweeps
game.
are very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Sweeps are very hard. And like Tampa didn't sweep the Habs when they met in the Stanley Cup Finals. Habs won one game.
Yeah.
Was it when they were down 3-0? Yes. Let's not focus on this too much. Now, the other Metro
penultimate
series. Carolina versus the New York Islanders. As of the recording of this podcast, they have already played game 1.
Yep.
Which Carolina won 3-1.
Close
I believe
game.
This goes.
It was an empty netter, I will say.
Yeah, it was an empty netter. I believe Carolina does this in 5. I know New York Islanders came into here with an absolute heater of the last 10 games.
8-1-1
as their coach. I love me some Patrick Waugh. Of course, look who I cheer for. I still will never forgive the coaching staff and the GM of the
crowd
1995 Montreal Canadiens. That was just terrible.
Oh my land, disheartening to say the least.
Keeping him in for 9 goals, but we'll not focus on that. That's not part of this discussion. Yes, the Islanders did really great to get a spot. Carolina is one of the most well-built, stacked teams in the entire league. They have perennially been incredibly good. The fact that Rob Brind'Amour has become such a great coach is literally one of the reasons why Montreal hired Marty St. Louis. I think it's the same kind of mindset as the Rangers series and the Canucks series. There's levels to this. They're going to show them that. Carolina in 5.
Carolina in 5.
I think the only way they don't win this series is if Freddie Anderson plays like Leafs Freddie Anderson in the playoffs. But even then,
that. Honestly, yeah, Leafs Freddie Anderson in playoffs was still the only reason why they stayed in.
Yeah, even then.
So this is an interesting one. I didn't think as much as the Slaughterfest, I won't lie. You have the Hurricanes, which is probably, at this point of their season, it's a must-win. They've been here too many times. And if they don't come out on top at this point, then they have to. Hurricanes started off horrible this year as well. Not great. They were bottom 3 in their division at one point, actually, if I'm correct. Very early on, though. Very early on. Then they turn it around, and Freddie Anderson has been a revelation again to that team. Kochetkov did great when he first came in. Not as great this season, but then again, you could still argue that Hurricanes have like 3 number 1 goalies, or 2 number 1 at least, which is just crazy to think about. And they have the offensive prowess. They do. Islanders are on a heater, 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. They are the hottest team entering the NHL playoffs at this time, and I don't think they're going to slow down. I think that they're going to still keep heating up, which will mean that Carolina will have a battle against them. I think that this is going to be one of the tightest ones, actually.
Really?
This is where we're different. I think this is going the full 7.
Really?
And not only that, I think we're going to have, and this is probably one of the only times I'll have this,
upset
we're going to have
alert?
an upset. I think Islanders
Ooh.
are gonna win this one. I legitimately do.
The chaos.
You can definitely 100% argue that maybe there's a little bias with Bo Horvat, but I legitimately believe, not even with Bo Horvat talking about that Canucks legend, that team is going to bring an upset to Carolina because all eyes are on Carolina to take this one,
Mm.
and I think that's why they could come in a little too cocky. Yes, they won their first game. However, it was a very
Yeah.
close game and one goal. It was a 3-1 game because of an empty netter.
Yeah.
Very big game. Freddie Anderson stole the show. No doubt about it.
Mm.
I do think
Oh yeah.
that on a good day, Sorokin is the better goalie, though. I do think
I
that.
do agree. I do agree.
Which Sorokin does have to continually show up. And obviously, the Islanders have always lived and died by Sorokin. It's true. And it showed this season when Sorokin didn't have a great start either. Both teams didn't have a good start, honestly. And both teams heated up in the second half. That's why I think it's going to go to Game 7, just because both these teams started off bad and they both fought back to get their spot by having crazy second half season numbers. But I do think at the ending, it is going to go to Islanders. Not necessarily because of firepower, but I think because they're heated up more so than the Hurricanes, that they are going to storm them. I think it's going to be a battle tooth and nail. I am going to give it to the Islanders, though.
Okay.
And last but not least, let's dive into the one that was saved, because someone has something to say about it. Would you like to say it first? Do you want me to put some notes in?
I am going first. I want to get my. I want to get.
I can't wait. I
this
got
is
the.
the
I'll
one.
get the drink ready.
Out of all, even through the rest of the bracket and through the other rounds, this is the one series that I picked that I have the most opinions on.
Honestly, not that hard of a pick, I won't lie. This is one of the easier ones for me, at least at the minimum. I don't know if it is for you, but I do have an easier pick with this one.
The Toronto Maple Leafs are facing the ghosts of playoffs past. Okay. 2011 lose the series in Game 7 after being up 4-1. I want to say 2013.
2013, yeah.
Starched 7 games. 2019 starched to the point where there was an actual, I want to say it was the Athletic, but I may be wrong in some other sports news site. Somebody made a whole story interviewing Leafs alumni on how dog water they are always playing against Boston, specifically in TD Garden.
Mm-hmm.
The entire story is how absolutely god awful they are against this team.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, once they got chosen to face Boston again, I got caught up in the Leafs fandom hype of them slaying the beast.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I'm a Habs fan. I shouldn't be cheering for either of these teams.
How could you?
This hurts me either way.
It literally, yeah. At least one has to lose.
One of them has to lose, which is silver lining. When we first started talking about revitalizing the pod, I brought up making a playoff bracket. I thought the Leafs were going to win against Boston. I really did. And then more and more information started coming out. Them losing every game against Boston this year.
Mm-hmm.
Them not winning in the playoffs against Boston since 1959. And doubts started creeping. But then again, Leafs fans, they're gonna get over the hump. They're gonna slay the beast. The Bruins are gonna fall. They're not the Bruins of old. Not only have I been swayed, I believe, and this was picked before Game 1.
Mm-hmm. All of these picks were before any Game 1.
Yeah. Boston in 6. I don't even think it's going to Game 7.
You think the Bruins are winning?
And honestly, if I had the hindsight of last night's game, I would have picked them in 5. But the only reason I picked them to win in 6 is just because of all the offensive prowess of Toronto. Their defense has not been great this year. They've had a lot of injuries to defense. Who knows if they're all technically full strength? I don't really think any team going into a playoff series in the NHL is at full strength, even though they're all playing.
Mm-hmm.
Their goaltenders have either been, at least Samsonov, it's either been red hot or god awful.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Wool, poor guy. I love the guy as a person. Not as good as last year.
No, definitely not. But all he did really was cover the shoes of an injured two goalies, actually, both Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov.
And it pains me to prefer Boston. It would also prefer me to. It would also hurt me to prefer Toronto, just not as much.
It's because one of these teams have been consistently
Boston in
bad.
6. David Pasternak's going to be on a heater.
Mm-hmm. Another
Their
guy with
offense,
100+ points.
their defense is, in my opinion, leaps and bounds over Toronto.
Their defense,
The only guy
definitely.
who I think Toronto has an edge over would be with Morgan Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Toronto has a stellar offense. I still think they're top heavy. I truly feel that where the Bruins goalies failed last year, they will succeed this year.
Well, they started the other one, though, anyways.
Yeah. It's going to be in 6. Part of me wanted to switch it to 5 after last game, but I'm keeping it how it was pre-game 1. Boston's going to beat them. Toronto's going to be demoralized. And pandemonium for the Toronto's offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemonium. Shanahan's going to be fired. I don't think they're going to fire their GM because they just hired him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time.
And he's made some good
Keefe
plays.
They will shoot Keefe out of a cannon if they lose against Boston.
Honestly, that's very likely.
They almost did last year when they got beat by Florida.
It's because they made it second round.
He will get launched into the stratosphere. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to do this, but if they lose against Boston, I don't see how you can rationally keep all of the big 4.
Mm-hmm.
You have to launch one of them to the moon. It's not going to be Matthews because you just saw. And it's not going to be Tavares because who's going to want Tavares at that number?
Mm-hmm.
Part of me thinks he might be a free agent, but I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. It would either be, I don't even think it would have to be Marner because Willie just signed an extension.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be Marner. He's the only one who has tenure on his current deal. And it's not really that fair because he got hurt a couple times. But if you just think financial logistics, it's him. You can't lock it that much. I know people have been saying this for Toronto for years. You can't lock up that many players to plus 10 AAU. It's just too much. Like, the only way they were able to get so much depth last year when they just barely squeaked through Tampa is because they got all their depth pieces in March.
Yeah, all rentals.
All rentals. And what did that get you? Squeaking by Tampa and getting starched by Florida.
Hi.
And my friend Tanya, who's a Toronto fan, she said she was going to watch this pod. And I told her that I picked the Leafs. I changed my mind. I'm sorry.
No way. Brutal.
I changed my mind.
Brutal.
I technically didn't lie.
Yeah, you picked on the Leafs. You didn't pick the Leafs. You just picked on them. Still, it doesn't count.
I picked the Leafs first. Then me and her talked about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I picked the Leafs."
Oh my.
And then after, I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. Don't hate me. Boston
You
6.
changed.
What's your choice?
You changed your answer. I'm gonna be honest. When I put down a team on this, I didn't change it. So this is my original. This is my original.
This
Nothing's
is the
changed.
original to
This is
this
hilarious.
bracket.
Oh my land, that's funny.
My official
Okay,
bracket always had Boston 6.
so this is interesting. So what you have is you have a top heavy Toronto, like you mentioned before, who has stellar offense, though Matthews may be a bit cold because of what's happened. But it's only been one game, and honestly, to talk about the one game, that's not what we're here for. We're talking about
To call
beforehand.
how many goals he scored in the last like 10 games?
In his last 10, he's on
He
fire. In
scored
his
9.
last 3,
No, I think it was only 2. I think it was only 2.
if you include the playoff,
Because
because
he scored number
he
68
didn't.
and 69 in game 80.
But Florida and Tampa, he just couldn't bury. I don't think he's that cold, honestly, but it might demoralize him enough to take him out
In
some.
the playoffs, he's less than a point per game,
Yeah.
but it's not by much.
Right now, he's not even 1 point. But we're not talking about what's already happened, because
Yeah.
that can confirm or not confirm some votes. Like, obviously, Hurricanes, Islanders. I have Islanders and the Canes won, so
Yeah.
we can't say. Boston and Maple Leafs. Like I said, Maple Leafs is top heavy. Their goaltending can be really good, and honestly, Samsonov showed up last night to kind of prove that point. Yeah, it was a 5-1 game, but it wasn't because of Sammy. We'll put it that way. It wasn't Sammy's
good
fault.
God.
Oh,
So
my man.
many useless penalties. What I will say before you continue,
Mm-hmm.
how god awful Toronto played. It's like 2021, 2022 Montreal, they took twice as many penalties.
Mm-hmm. And just
It
high
was
sticking alone.
some of the worst hockey I have watched in a long time.
Not good control
Continue.
and not good much at all.
Continue.
Again, though, we're not considering the first game to influence what we decide, except for the fact that we technically don't have any proof, but you'll have to take our word for it. Wink, wink. I'm kidding. But the thing about the Bruins, they weren't supposed to be good. They were supposed to barely make wild card. And that's what's so scary about Boston, is that there's not a good enough reason to say why they're where they are. Yeah, at the ending they lost their spot because they couldn't beat the Senators. Vegas Golden Knights couldn't beat the Ducks. That's why Vegas is in the wild card too. It's like, why are Bruins good and have been consistently good all season? Because the team battling with the Canucks a lot for first place was Boston for most of the season.
Yeah.
And Boston was battling with Vegas even at the beginning too. So why are Bruins so good is what is terrifying about them.
It's been
because
like that
it's like they
10 years.
lost players, they lost depth. Why are they still a top 5 team?
Well, they are coming
Or
off of the
top
best regular
7,
season of all time.
Excuse me, they were 7th. And that's where I think it's even more terrifying. They just came back from one of the most humiliating, if not the most humiliating moment in NHL playoff history for round 1, at least. And I know that's really scrutinizing it, but they had the best record. The best record of all time, and they lost to Florida.
Yeah.
In a game 7 where they were up 3-1. It's like, what? It's not as embarrassing, sure, as Philadelphia's little 3-0 in 2010, but are you serious? There's no way that does not enrage them and fuel them to an extent. When they don't
That's another
have
reason why
the
I think they're beating
names
the Leafs.
other than Pasternak, which they did sign. They don't have the crazier names like they did. They lost pieces. Pieces retired. They're supposedly a weaker team. Tell that to Boston. They didn't take the hint. Shows how much I really like Boston. I don't think it's even a shadow of a doubt that because Boston has been so underlyingly good, like underratedly good, it's annoying. They can't be overrated because it's like, why are they good? And that's the part of how I think they're so underrated, at least, for how good they are. I do think it's Bruins winning. However, I wrote 5.
You wrote 5.
I wrote 5 games.
Almost picked 5.
I wrote 5 because though the Maple Leafs are a really good version of themselves right now, it's the problem that Boston is so good for no in particular reason other than it's just Boston. Obviously, their goaltending is phenomenal and has been. Allmark was a little bit less than normal. Swayman had a few games that weren't great. My fantasy told me so. I hated that.
Both of our fantasy told us so.
However, just because they didn't have a great some games, they're still a top 5 goalie. At least one of them you can place in the top 5, if not both. I'd put Swayman there. That's why he did start. I just don't think Toronto has a chance, a shot at all. And it sucks because I would rather the Leafs win, but I don't think they have a shot because Bruins are good for just the reason that they've been consistent. And Maple Leafs have not. The entirety of this season, they have been consistent. A little bit at the end of the slowdown.
Decade.
Yeah. And there is no reason why they are, and it's just like, why are they up where they were? And yes, there are so many names that you could put in there as to why. I just think the team is clicking together so unbelievably well that there's just no shot.
I'm a Habs fan. Yes, both
I'm a
of these
Canucks
teams
fan.
are rivals of my team.
Bro, I hate the Bruins.
But both of us have a lot of friends who are Leafs fans.
And I would much rather they win.
I feel so bad for them every year they play Boston. Because they go out of the series, Toronto loses, and they look like they lost their dog. That's how upset they are. Drained, depressed, empty. I'd like for them to get a win.
I wish
just
so
for the
bad.
fan base, but I just don't see it.
It's one of those games where it's like, man, I'd rather this team win, but the chance of that happening is so low that I just don't think it's even feasible. I for the fact that both of us at least wanted to say 5 games just shows that
I was this
how
close.
much faith we have.
I was this close.
I had more faith in them last
year.
I
put 6, and then I watched game 1. I was like, this is horrendous. I watched like the first period and a half, and I went to the cheese. I was like, I can't watch this anymore.
I will say that watching the full game, Toronto did turn it up in that game, and I know it's one of the only 2 games that was played, and that's why we can kind of have more stuff, but oh my, Boston will make you pay if you sleep for a minute.
Yeah.
And then they will hold the lead because they have the goaltending to be able to do it, and they have the defense. Toronto has the better offense, and Boston has the better defense and the better goaltending. And so if Boston scores, which they have the better power play numbers, or if they don't, it might be quite close. I think Toronto technically has the better by 2%. I think they had the better power play. Boston, though, they're not a bad team. They're one of the best teams. And their stats, though, a little bit lower offensively than Toronto. It's like saying, Toronto's one of the best. Well, Boston is too, just a little less. And their defense and goaltending is
their offense
miles
isn't
better.
that much worse.
It's not, and that's why if Boston catches you sleeping and just snipes one in, gets in front of your goalie, and the defense doesn't push him out, that didn't happen 2 or 3 times.
Like David Pasternak's shot is like the brush of death going towards your goaltender.
Yeah.
Brad Marchand has the second most playoff points in Bruins history.
The rat.
History. That pains me to no end. He's
a Canadian, though. That's the good spot. That's the good thing about it.
Yeah, but he just topped Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah, and he deserves it as much as you may not like the guy. He does deserve it because he's a good player as much as he can be a rat. He's a good player. And yeah, I think there's just it's painful to say. For both of us, honestly, it's painful to say the Bruins are going to win this one. But yeah, it is.
Yeah,
So why don't we
I
move
agree.
back to the West? I'll take first for
Yeah,
West again,
yeah.
baby. And then
So
you can
just to
have
recap, did
East.
we pick the same for the first two series,
We
or did
picked,
you pick
everything
Winnipeg?
was the same except for two. I picked the Islanders to win, and I picked the Jets to win, and you picked Avalanche and the
Okay,
Hurricanes. Those are the only two differences so
yeah,
far, which means that, hey, we're on the same
that's
wavelength
pretty good.
without
So
much
how do you
knowledge of each
think
other's
Dallas
lists.
versus Winnipeg?
This was by far, no doubt in my mind, this was the hardest to pick for me. Out of everything that was here on this list, this was the hardest. And there will be a difference. We both picked Stars, but he picked Avalanche, I picked Jets, so I am going to say my perspective, he's going to say his. You'll just live with it.
Yeah.
But Stars and Jets, I don't even know where to begin with who I would think was going to win, just other than the fact that I wrote a team down, and I have a reason for it, of course. But these two teams are both heavyweights right now. They're both top 5 teams. I think Stars were second, Jets were fourth. Maybe they were even third, honestly. All I know is that these two teams are so tight, especially in the ending of the season. They're big
You
teams.
do have
They
one
have,
and two in the Central. You do
yeah,
have 1 and 2 in the Central.
yeah.
So
They're big teams. They're going to clash against each other. They both have phenomenal offense and great defense. Both of these teams are coming head to head, and the reason why I ended up making the decision at the ending came down to the same reason as the first round. You can have a great offense and a great defense, but if you do not have a consistent goaltender and a stellar goaltender, you're not making it. And that is the only reason why in 7 games, in a surprise twist, the Jets will take this one. There is no doubt in my mind
okay.
that the better goalie in this case is Hellebuck. And because
Yeah.
both teams are good, I will give Stars are the better team. They got the standings higher for that reason. I think Hellebuck is going to play a lights out game. And in 7 games, I'm saying it's tooth and nail. I'm saying every game is close. I think the Jets will edge out. This is definitely, without a doubt, probably the most controversial pick so far. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I do think the Jets are coming. Even more controversial than the Islanders. I think the Jets could squeeze this one out in a shocking twist because of the goaltending X factor. And I know I talk a lot about goaltending. Those two teams are so close together in every department. But I think the goaltending does go enough sway to the Jets that they could take it.
Okay.
I can't wait to hear that the Jets I've already put to round 3, and you had them exit round 1. I love it though. This is the fun part about playoff trees is that you can have vastly different outcomes just because of a certain round not going. I think if Avalanche went against Stars, I will add this. I won't say why. Stars take it, no doubt. That's my opinion. If Avalanche were to be second round, I think the Stars would beat them.
I don't agree.
I can't wait to hear. This is with no reasoning. This is just off the top of my head. If Avalanche and Stars, I took no time to really think about it with that one. It's just because he's doing a different one.
Now, these guys are both playoff veteran teams.
Gurus.
I do think it's going 7 games. I have just always been wrong when I doubted the Avalanche.
I'm not doubting the Avalanche.
So
6 games.
in Game 7, I believe Colorado will win. I just think that
Landeskog buff. I forgot about the Landeskog buff. That's what it is.
Yeah, and now, in your argument for Winnipeg, Hellebuck is by and large better than Georgiev.
It's the goaltending, yeah.
By and large. But with me putting Colorado into the second round, I feel like Ottinger and Georgiev aren't that much. I do think Ottinger is better,
Yeah, definitely. Especially if
but
we just take this season alone, I think
yeah,
they're closer together. Definitely.
but I don't think the goaltending is that much different to play that big of a factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Colorado's going to win 7 games. So
I
we're
I
not
can see
that much.
why. I did forget about the Landeskog buff. Uh, like I said, I took no consideration when I just spitballed that out.
Yeah.
Avalanche does have the better offense, definitely.
And like yes, they're both proven in the playoffs somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado knows what it takes to win a cup.
Mm-hmm.
Because they did it recently. And they have 90% of that team still. With different pieces swapping in just to because you can't keep everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 7 games Colorado uh, squeaks out. And to tease my Western Conference final, I do think that plays a factor. The fact they go 7.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely gonna be. Uh, Honestly, for the fact that we both said 7, I think it's true. Those three teams, just excluding Vegas, though Vegas is a big. Honestly, if Vegas was a part of this, all four of those teams are so closely
They're
woven
so
together,
good.
and the only reason why Vegas is because the injuries coming back.
Yeah.
Those players coming back, I think, really helps their depth, of course. All
I know
four of those teams are
everybody
so close. This was the
everybody
toughest
like
division by far.
everybody trolls the Vegas Golden Knights for always like circumventing the salary cap. I don't think it works for them this year.
I mean, honestly, the Avalanche used it too, but there were like what 14 teams I think that used it, which I wish the Canucks did, but don't worry, I didn't mention it. Canucks got all their players injured, including Demko, after the trade deadline, which was horrible. But
But speaking about that stuff,
so
how do you see Vancouver Edmonton
this
though?
is
You
this
picked Edmonton,
is this is an easier pick for me. Like I said, the Central Division was the hardest to judge, and the second round especially, just because all those teams are close
right? Yeah.
together. I think there is a difference when it comes to Canucks Oilers. Um, and I will say with Nashville and Canucks, the games were I believe 2-1 in favor of Canucks for
Yeah.
how many they played in the regular season. Canucks won both those games 5-2 when they did, which was hilarious against Nashville. Oilers, it's a bit tougher to judge because 3 of those 4 games happened when Oilers were absolute dog water.
Yeah.
I remember in the preseason, it was the game before. The last preseason game for Canucks was against Oilers, and the Oilers beat them. Now, at the time, the Oilers had the best version of their team, and the Canucks had nobody because they were playing their AHL affiliates. They were putting a
Yeah.
lot of them on that team. And the Oilers won, understandably so. And it did not make me feel good at the time. Then the first game happened, 8-1. The second game happened, 4-3. A lot closer of a game, but it was a back-to-back. Or they, not a
Yeah.
back-to-back, but they played each other for the first 2 games of the
2 times in
season,
a row. Yeah.
which is funny. Then the third game happened, and I don't quite remember the score. I know Canucks won that one in convincing fashion. And unfortunately, we didn't play them too much in after when the Oilers went on that stint because we only played them one other time, and it was one of the last games when the Oilers and Canucks were facing each other for the Pacific title, as a matter of fact. And I will mention, both of the biggest players on each team were missing. McDavid was not there; he was injured at the time. And for anyone that wants to say that Canucks had the advantage, Demko was injured, and DeSmith had already played a bunch of games and was showing how we needed Demko to be
Yeah.
there. So there was a disadvantage for both teams. Whether you say one weighed more than the other is all opinionated, I guess. So it's tough to say. It was a very close game, that one. Canucks did edge that one out 3-1. And I just preface that because I want to make it clear that though the bias can be very apparent, and I think you know why, where this is leading to, I think that the evidence, even if you don't include the 3 first games, I think the evidence does suggest a winner. I think that the Oilers have a phenomenal offense for one line. Canucks, overall, have the better offense because it's not just one line they depend on. Defense-wise, both are decent, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's both teams' weakest factor comes in the back end. However, I do think that Oilers have a better defense than they do goaltending. But both have their lowest point is defense. You can argue goaltending, like I said, for Oilers. And again, when you have two big offense powerhouses coming against each other with decent defense, and then again, and this is where the list is coming very apparent. I list based off goaltending. It seems to be the last thing for me. Skinner has zero chance unless he is absolutely on fire. I will say McDavid is the better player than any of the Canucks players. I agree with that. Draisaitl, not great this year. He's been not as good as last year, but McDavid, you could say the same. Again, they had that little stint at the beginning, but Draisaitl took a lot longer than McDavid to really bounce back from the bad start. Hyman's had a great season, and I will give the praise I can to Skinner having some bounce back and Evan Bouchard being great. I don't think it's enough, though. I do think the Canucks are actually going to take this one. I think that because the Canucks have more depth and the goaltending, I will say depth is a big factor of this as well. I think Canucks take this in 6. And this is where I think we're also different. So, Cakes.
Yeah.
I think that it's because of depth and goaltending that Canucks do take this one, though.
We all made the exact same points 2 years ago when Colorado won the Stanley Cup. Can you remember who Colorado beat in the Western Conference Final?
Wasn't that... No, Vegas didn't make it there. Oh, yeah, it was Edmonton. Was it not?
It was Edmonton.
Yeah.
It was Edmonton, and Edmonton made it to the Western Conference Finals when Leon Draisaitl could barely skate.
Mm-hmm.
He was still scoring like a madman, but he couldn't move on the ice. He just had to like slowly waddle basically to whatever spot he's gonna shoot or pass from. And they still got all the way to the Western Conference Finals and only lost to the eventual Cup winners.
Mm-hmm.
He is healthier. I don't know if he's fully healthy, but he's healthier. He's in the lineup. I do think if Edmonton has learned anything, split him and McDavid onto different lines, unless you're running the power play, because how are you not going to have both of them out on the power play? I believe in the same amount of games, Edmonton will win because Connor McDavid is sick of losing.
He definitely is. Definitely. I hope he did recover. By the way, I will say I hope he did recover fully from that injury that he got at the ending. Because if he didn't, and they're making him play round 1 with that injury,
let's be real, Matthew. If Connor McDavid plays at 70% in the playoffs, he's still going to lead the playoffs in points.
He's still the best player.
He's still the best.
Last year, he barely did anything for points. But Draisaitl came in.
Exactly. When one guy gets shut down, they have 2 heart-winning centers.
That's the thing. They have the pieces. Yeah.
They have prime 2010s Pittsburgh Penguins level center depth.
Mm-hmm.
Nuge.
Who's had a rough start. Had a rough start, but he also bounced back as well.
Yes, but he's their 3rd best center.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. Well, that's what happens.
On half of teams, he could be the number 1 center.
Yeah. Especially Sharks. Sorry, Shark fans.
So I think
you guys will get him next year.
Edmonton is going to win. Vancouver's going to squeak out a couple games. particularly because of Demko. But the games that Edmonton wins, do not be surprised if they are by like 3 or 4 or more goals.
I don't think I won't argue the fact that Oilers could win. I definitely don't argue that. I don't know if it'd be by that much. Not because I'm praising Demko for being stellar, but because Oilers have not really been able to score on Canucks. They really haven't. The most they have gotten in a game, if I'm correct, is 3, and it was back when they were bad. But they got 1 goal against DeSmith. So I gotta wonder what on earth was going on with that, especially when McDavid's not the one scoring. He's the assist maker. Does not matter. McDavid is still insane.
Scored 30 goals.
I know. McDavid is still crazy out of his mind. Yeah, I can see though the Oilers taking it. I won't argue it. As much as I do think the Canucks will, again, that can play into bias. And one thing I did not mention as well about it, and it's technically not in Canucks' favor. The reason why I did talk about the Vegas Canucks one when Demko went .975 save percentage, Canucks don't have veteran playoff presence. And that's why it can be scary, because how nervous are the Canucks going to play? Because they don't have that, and I think that could have a factor against them. Against McDavid, who has it. I still, though, even with that knowledge, because of the Vegas series that happened, I still think the Canucks could do it, because now they had that 1 year, and a lot of those players, I think, are going to be able to bounce back, because Besser wasn't good at the time, and now he is. JT Miller wasn't great, now he is. I still think the Canucks do it, but I don't argue seeing the Oilers
I do admire the gumption for you to keep going with your team.
That's why it's kind of like I wonder. I don't think the bias has hit at this point in time. I do think that the first 2 rounds, I see legitimate chance. I do too. I definitely can see the second series going either way. I think if it's Kings win. That's not even a joke. I think if Kings make a second round, Kings win, because the Canucks cannot beat the Kings for the life of them. Mind you, the Kings played the Canucks without Demko, like, ever. But the Kings are like Canucks kryptonite. But Oilers, I think Oilers have the kryptonite to the Canucks. All right, let's go over to the East before I continue to blush over my team. So why don't we do whatever one you want, honestly.
Florida and Boston, they will slay their beast. Boston in 5. I am full on the Boston train, which pains me to no end. I think they're going to be like, we're up 3-1, not like last year, and they're going to spank Florida. I know that's a hot take. You probably think if Boston does win, you probably think that it's going to be closer. No.
The spanking.
I know how Boston plays too well to know what they're going to do. They will not repeat what happened last year. It's going to be decidedly in Boston's favor. Boston in 5.
I like what you're going with. I like the short and sweet, and you know what? I'll replicate it. I think it is going to be close. I think it is going to be 7 games. There's no doubt in my mind.
You think it's going to be 7?
I think it's going to be 7. No doubt in my mind. It's Bruins. And just because the Panthers did better, and they got higher in the standings. Again, it's the same reason with round 1. Why is Boston so good? The synergy has to be off the charts compared to any other team in the NHL.
Oh, yeah.
The Bruins take it. There's no doubt about it. I do think 7 games. I admire the absolute pummeling that you believe will happen, and it could very well happen. But yeah, Bruins definitely. I hate it too.
We both hate it.
I hate it so much.
Now, for me, the next round is Rangers against Carolina.
Right. That was the other change.
I'm thinking 6 games for New York. I believe New York is going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
It's a problem when you said New York. I look at my sheet and I go, "Wait, they're both New York."
The Rangers will win. The games will not be blowouts for either team. But I do believe this will come down to Shesterkin being a world beater. And he will be that, in my personal opinion. New York goes on in 6 games to face Boston in the Eastern Conference Final.
I would
What's your pick?
agree with your list. If it was Rangers against Carolina, it's not my list. But if it was what I put, I would put Rangers too, just because, especially last year's embarrassment that it was.
Mm.
I think the Rangers are going to go crazy if they were against Carolina in this case. I have Rangers versus Islanders because out of any underdog team that's possible, the only underdog I chose was the Islanders. Every other team was the first seed against second seed, which is really funny to think about, except for this series. Again, keeping it short and sweet, and whatever it is, I do agree that it is going to be tight. Even if it was Carolina, I would agree it would be tight. I'm thinking 7 games for this one. And at the ending, I ended up going with New York Islanders. I think that the Islanders
Again, I
would
admire the
upset
gumption on
the
the
Rangers.
hot take.
This is by far another absolute banger hot take, and it would totally upset and flip the minds of it. But what have Islanders been known to do in past times? The thing about Islanders is they expect you to underrate them and to undermine them. And I know that last year they weren't great, and they didn't have a good team. They have a better team than last year. But do you remember, what was the one team in the last, 3 years, the only team that was able to stop them in playoffs?
Stop the Islanders? It was
Islanders. It was Tampa, the Stanley Cup champions of those 2 years. And the Islanders brought them neck and neck. Game 7, both times. And Tampa barely etched
Those
them.
are great
And
series,
they were grueling games. And I think the Islanders still have that grit in them. They're still that team.
Yes, but is Patrick Waugh going to play them like
that's
they
the
had
question. That is the
Barry
question.
Trotz.
Exactly. There was a difference in it. I think they bring that grit to it. I don't think the Rangers stand... they do stand a chance, obviously. If I said they didn't stand a chance, it'd be a
he picked it in 7 games.
I think that the Islanders will outplay the Rangers in the ending. And this is one of the only times where it's the goalie that's worse that I'm choosing the team to win on. I know, it's crazy. But I do think that the Islanders are going to shock it. This is one of those picks, I will say, that though it has a little bit of reasons why, it's definitely not the most malleable evidence that you can use to support it. I just think that the Islanders, because of the heater they had and because of the grit and tenacity they're known for, I do think that they take it against the Rangers. Another upset.
It won't be the first time a team on a heater going into the playoffs went on a heater in the playoffs.
Because if Panthers proved anything, you gotta watch out for some of these hot teams that may not be high in the standings, but man, you gotta watch out, and I do think the Islanders will take it against the Rangers, to the dismay of every Rangers. And man, I tell you what, if the Islanders were to win these 2 games, I don't know if Carolina and Rangers would even keep their teams. I think at that point they'd blow up the core just because of it. All right, we're to the West now. We got 4 teams left. This is definitely what's going to happen.
Conference Finals.
Western Conference Finals. In our series, neither of our West teams are the same. The only team that's the same is Bruins, which is terrible. Terrible to say the least. Jets versus Canucks. This is the first time, at least for the Canucks, that I cannot use the goalie to my advantage because Hellebuck is the other Vezina candidate. When it came down to this season, at least, there were 2 candidates for the Vezina Trophy that are clear as day, and they're the 2 that deserve it to most. And I think this series is the defining series for who's going to take it. The edge right now 100% goes to Hellebuck, but Demko is the second for sure in this case. And I do think that Hellebuck will have the advantage, and so using the goalie trope, I guess, is not going to be able to be used. This was definitely another one that I had to second guess, and I had to take some more time on it. I don't know why the East has been the easiest to judge. I have no idea why the Bruins have to be that good. But the West has been a lot tougher because you got two teams that I wonder what Cakes is going to think just because you have neither of these teams on there. Because yours is what? Avalanche and Oilers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have, like I said, Jets and Canucks, Hellebuck, Demko, putting those two neck and neck. It's going to be interesting to see. And honestly, these teams are so close together that to say that one is going to be better than the other is what's crazy. That's why 100% it's a game 7. If it were Jets and Canucks in round 3, they're so closely woven together. They're so close in the standings. For the West, at least, it's Jets then Canucks in the standings. Like, sort of base off of who's got the better offense, who's got the better defense, who's got the better goalie. They're so close together. It's like saying this guy gets first place, but this guy is second place. But then one team's offense is first place and the other's is second place. And it's like, it's going back and forth. Again, I'm not saying that Canucks and Jets have the best two offenses ever. I'm just saying that's how closely woven they are together and how good they are. Yeah. And in all honesty, I was going to choose one team over the other. I was. And then one stat came up, and it changed everything. Hey there, post-production here, and why don't we kind of cover up the fact that I'm about to make one of the biggest mistakes I can while judging who makes it to the next stage. Now, what I'm about to go on to say is that the Jets and Canucks have faced each other 3 times, and the Canucks have beaten the Jets on all 3 occasions. This is simply false. We even talked about this fact the couple minutes leading up to us starting the podcast, that the Jets beat the Canucks in the most scuffed way in the last game for both of them, 4-2. And I ended up, for some reason, mixing up Nashville and Canucks matchup with the Jets and Canucks matchup. Nashville and Canucks beat them all 3 times. But with the Jets and Canucks, it was actually a much more even bout, with the first game going to Winnipeg 4-2. Vancouver then beats Winnipeg 5-0, and then the final game where the Jets beat Canucks in the most scuffed game possible. Now, the reason that I end up picking one team over the other is because of how close the games were, but who has the little edge over it. But it's just a mistake that I can't believe I made during it. Like, oh my land. We ended up recording this for like 3 hours. We ended up talking about this for like 5 hours, and it's just funny some of the mistakes you can catch along the way. And don't worry if I sound really stuffed right now. It's because I've been dealing with sickness all week, and I've been meaning to try and get this out beforehand. I hope you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful night, whatever time it is. But basically, everything I say prior to this moment is all factual, except for a couple parts probably. There's a couple things, but they're too minor I don't have to worry about. But this one was such a big flaw, or just a big wrong fact that I try and give, that I had to step in and correct it. In reality, the Jets did take a 2-1 series out of the regular season games, but this still wouldn't change the answer I'm about to give, but it does absolutely change how good I feel about choosing it now. Again, hope you had a wonderful day, and let's just jump back into the podcast. It's actually been in the favor of the Canucks, and because of that alone, and it has nothing to do with bias, I was going to choose Jets. I'm not even kidding. Canucks would take it against the Jets. If, for some reason, if it was the Avalanche, I would say Avalanche, though. If it was Avalanche against Canucks, I would say Avalanche because the Canucks never beat the Avalanche. They didn't have Demko any of those games. One of them, I shouldn't say. But
yeah.
I would say Avalanche beats Canucks. But if it's Jets and Canucks, I think Canucks take it just because the Jets haven't beaten the Canucks even once. And they're so closely woven that it would go to Canucks. I'm interested to see Avalanche Oilers. What do you have for
Now, I will say before I make my official picks, if I go off of your matchup, I think it's also Canucks. I don't think it's that close.
Really?
I would say in 6.
Okay. I mean, that's still a lot of games.
I'm not as high on Winnipeg's off as you are.
The whiteout. By the way, I didn't mention that is 2 Canadian teams in the finals, which would guarantee one makes it to the finals. Please, if 2 Canadian teams make it to the finals, that would be wonderful.
So for my official picks, Colorado against Edmonton. I think if I look at two very potent offenses. Which one I think will more likely shell the other team's goaltending? I'm picking Edmonton in 6. I think
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton makes it to the finals. I
I
think
can
they
see
beat
that.
Colorado. I think this
Revenge.
will be Connor McDavid will prove more than any other year that he is a mutant. He is not human.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I say in 6 is because Colorado's such a good overall team. I think Edmonton makes it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
You know what? I actually fully agree. If those were the two teams, I would
I
think
think they
Edmonton
do.
as well. I would.
Edmonton's offense more compensates for their defense and goaltending than Colorado's does.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
It
I
is.
can't bet.
Goalies are
I
matched
can't
though.
bet.
Goalies are matched in that
I
one.
can't bet
That's nice.
on the best Canadian hockey player since Wayne Gretzky.
Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. No question.
And I know you're gonna be like, what about Lemieux? What about Crosby? Lemieux's incredible. Crosby still playing, still incredible.
Top five of all time. Both of them would be in the top
The
five.
only person who is as prolific as a player in Canadian hockey history, which basically makes it all of hockey history, than Gretzky is Connor McDavid.
And that's why it's going to be
People,
interesting to see.
people could say
Mm-hmm.
recency bias. I don't care. Edmonton in 6 going on the finals.
Yeah, you know what? I agree to that. Even the number I would agree to. I could see it in 7. I wouldn't see it any less than 6, though. There's no way Avalanche would go down because McKinnon is
Yeah,
still amazing.
yeah, I agree with that too. Because their offense is really stellar. I don't see them going down in less than 6.
Mm-hmm.
But they do go down in 6.
I mean, you want to know what makes actually the Oilers the most terrifying? They're the only team this season to prove that they can win 16 straight. That's the scariest thing. They're the only team to prove that.
Their power play
Ooh.
is McDavid, Draisaitl. I'm pretty sure Zach Hyman,
Mm-hmm.
Evan Bouchard, and
They kind of
one other guy I can't remember.
mix it. Well,
Probably
is it
Nuge, but
McLeod
I
or is
could be
it
wrong.
McLeod that's on that? I forget if
It
he's
might be
first or
McLeod.
second. Because I know that
He's
we
on
haven't
one of
mentioned it. Oilers do have depth in their offense. It's not to say they
In their
don't.
offense, yes.
They do. Their defense not great. Because I know Evander Kane's not there. I have seen Corey Perry on there a couple times.
Yeah.
That's always funny, but that's because he can get in front of the net. But that's Hyman too. So, oh man,
But yeah.
that'd be exciting. All right.
How does your Eastern final? Boston against the wrong New York.
Yeah, I got that. I have Bruins and Islanders. I'll let you go first just because it's East again.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens in the finals. Or mock draft finals.
Game 7. Game 7.
Ooh.
Igor Shesterkin puts up a shutout to bring New York Rangers to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I like the optimism. And that's because Boston
Not only do
loses,
I think it's a
that's
shutout,
why
I will predict the exact score to be 3-0.
Wow.
In Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Who scores them?
Who scores? Zibanejad. I'll go Panarin because he's the easy pick. And screw it. Alexis Lafreniere. X1 overall pick. First overall pick. With 3 goals.
X first.
Oh,
that is I like that outcome just because actually I hate that outcome. Hold up. I just realized. It just clued into me. I hate your East Conference Finals. Why'd you pick the two teams that beat the Canucks in Game 7? Wait a second.
That was not intentional.
I don't like this game. That's funny, actually. You know what's crazy? I'm looking at that playoff simulation that they did. It's near identical. Not the amount of games played, but who wins is near identical. Save, there are 2 differences, and obviously the outcome that they have in that mock is that Bruins come out on top of the Rangers. I don't like either of them, but if I don't like a team more, I don't like Bruins more, because it's more recent. I was actually alive for that one. Wasn't really
Yeah.
wasn't really kicking around
First
for
one
the
being
other.
in '94.
Yeah, their second playoff
Yeah.
appearance. 0-3. Worst record
Yeah. How does
in
your
finals history.
Boston Islanders go?
Boston Islanders. It's a rematch to say the least because Bruins and Islanders definitely don't like each other. Islanders came out on top the other time, did they not, in Game 7? It was like a round 1 or 2. I think it was round 2 when Islanders would
I
eventually
believe
fall
so.
to the Lightning, which
Yeah.
is just something, I guess. I don't know. Bruins and Islanders, I don't think it's going to be 7 games. I see the potential of it. I think it is going to be 6 games, and I think a team wins. I don't want to mention them. I think the Islanders finally succumb to their
I
hot
do
streak.
agree
I
with
think
that.
they would be burnt out, and sad to say, and honestly, even if it was Rangers, I hate to say this, I think the Bruins are going to come out on top no matter what in the third round. Whoever team they play,
And like
it does
yes, I
not
picked in
matter.
Game 7. I think it will be a dog fight.
Yeah,
So
does not matter which New York team you put there. It could be the
yeah.
Hurricanes even. I think
Mm.
Boston will come out on top no matter what. Don't worry, I didn't mention Capitals because there ain't no way they make it. Q when they
No
make it.
shot.
Q when they
No
make it.
shot.
But I
Coming from the
do,
one team I said is getting swept,
yeah,
no shot.
I
Anyway.
think the Bruins are going to make it. And that means then in the finals, it'd be a Canucks Bruins.
Oh,
Oh,
the
that would,
ghost of Stanley Cup Finals passed for
oh
you. You
my
go first, man. I
gosh.
want to hear what you want to say.
This now, what's hilarious is we ended up in the finals with 2 completely different teams, and honestly, it's to
Mhm.
make sense. Um, I will talk just a little bit more, but just kind of rehash why I put these in the finals. Canucks are there mainly because Demko would help them, but because they have such an offensive prowess and their defense has smartened up compared to past times. The
Yeah,
weakest aspect of the Canucks is still their penalty kill. There's no doubt about that. And if Canucks do not stay out of the box, it'll cause trouble, which is a problem when you have Boston Bruins, who have been an underlyingly dominant team. It does not make sense. Obviously, if you dove into the players, it would start to add up as to why. The synergy is all there. They are a dominant team, front end to back end. Defense is probably their weakest, but that means absolutely nothing because their weakest is still really good
yeah.
comparatively to any NHL team. Boston
Mhm.
has been consistent, and it would bring a Game 7 no matter what. There is no question about it. Um, this this was also a tough one to do because I either have to take the biased approach and choose my team, or I have to lose my marbles and say Boston. And a decision had to be made. There's a stat. I don't know. I don't believe we talked about it on the podcast. There's a stat that exists. When the Stanley Cup first happened, there was a team called the Vancouver Millionaires. They had 4 finals. They lost the first 3 and won the final one. I think that if this were to come out and these 2 teams were to come together, I think that in Game 7, don't laugh, I think Canucks would take their revenge
Say it.
against Boston. And I think
Heck yeah.
in a mock draft, I'm not jinxing it in any way. Buzz off! I think that if it were Boston and Canucks would take it in Game 7 and would win the thing. I'm not mentioning it because you don't say it before. That's a rule. You do not say it if it is your own team, and I will not say it until it comes to fruition. I think the Canucks would beat the Bruins in Game 7. I think it would be a dogfight, just like it was prior to. I think that the Canucks, due to the fact that it would have to be, and I'm just saying this right now. The list was made, and I'll put a photo of the playoff simulation of NHL 24. This list
Yeah.
was not made with this simulation in mind. Not a clue at the time, actually, that this is the outcome. And though a lot of the games were different, the outcome was Canucks and Bruins, and even that said that the Canucks would win in Game 7. I think it would be destiny. And that is legitimately the most biased pick out of this all. Because if it comes down to Hope, Star Wars edition, or it comes down to, well, they gotta win because the last time a Vancouver team was in their 4th attempt, they won it. Like, these teams, it would be a dogfight. Bruins are the bigger, bruter team. And in all honesty, both these teams faced each other. It was actually, I don't know if they faced each other 2 or 3 times. It was back and forth, though. The team series were back and forth. And so I think if it was 3 games, Boston was up 2-1. If it was only 2 games, then it was a tie. I think it was 2 games, though. And so it's pretty even in that sense. But yeah, it is definitely superstition that may factor into that one in the ending. But it doesn't matter because you have the Oilers and Rangers. And I'd like to see what you think about those.
I will say, though, if the finals end up like you say, I agree with the amount of games. I do not agree with who you say wins.
And I don't argue that. I will
say that.
This is going to be a different year if they go all the way. I can't take another heartbreak, and I will not say Bruins. And honestly, I should say that it's not because I think that, and just because of the stats that Canucks would win. There is some reason. I do think Demko is the better one. I'm not relying on goaltending as much. It's tough to say, and that's why it would be Game 7. But I do think the Canucks would topple their demons. Please. Please.
Oh, yeah. For me, the second Gretzky Bowl, or you could say the Messier Bowl also, of the playoffs. Edmonton Oilers versus New York Rangers. I believe, like the second round when I picked Colorado to beat Dallas very closely, and that affecting them against Edmonton, I believe my pick of New York winning in 7 against Boston will wear them out too much. And I believe the Edmonton Oilers will win the 2024 Stanley Cup. Connor McDavid will get the first Stanley Cup of hopefully many in his illustrious career.
I would agree with that if that means that he would have to beat our teams out. I don't know if I like that.
Yeah. I want to say 7 because, of course, Shesterkin against McDavid is like a clash of 2 titans. I'm picking Edmonton in 6.
You know what?
And the only reason I'm not picking them in less is because of Shesterkin.
I would agree that I think the Oilers would exercise those demons of the curses of all of it, and the Rangers would fall. Yeah, I agree. I would see that. I don't know. I think I would still say 7 for it, just because these two teams are so good. Definitely the Rangers have a bit of an advantage, especially defensively. They would have the advantage. But that's tough, actually. The more I think about it, I spitball an answer, and I'm like, they have the better goalie and the better defense. Is the offensive Oilers better?
Yes.
You know what? I don't agree. I think...
You don't agree?
No, I don't agree. I think Rangers would win. I agree that McDavid is the better player out of any player that you pit against him.
I think their whole
Rangers have the stronger team. Oh, you know what? Actually, I pick Oilers. One thing. President's Trophy cannot win. Sorry, guys. You just nerfed everything. You just nerfed everything. That's another reason why the Islanders did win. That was more of a joke when I didn't mention it. That's not the reason why I picked Islanders over Rangers, but yeah, the President's Trophy curse is a nerf.
After our playoff brackets, we both have Canadian teams winning
Yep.
for the first time
We
since
have
1993.
we have a fun
Go
one.
Habs, go!
Yes, the
um,
Habs did it.
but yeah,
That is the
that's our brackets.
that's our
That went longer than I expected.
that went a lot. I actually did expect it to go a long time just because, but it's okay. This is the reason of a podcast.
Yeah.
You can watch it, you can pause it, you can step away, you can cry about us not picking your team, you can celebrate us picking your team. And if your team didn't make the playoffs, well, there's a reason why your team wasn't picked. And if you want us to pick if your team's gonna get the first round pick, if you cheer for a Canadian team or a team that's not in a big city, then no, you're not getting it.
Speaking about
Chicago's
not
gonna
being in
get
a
it.
big
No,
city and getting it,
oh, nice transition. Yes.
I would like to offer my sincerest condolences to the Arizona fan base. You do not deserve what has happened to your team. It's not because you guys aren't a riling fan base. It's not even that you have garbage players. Like, yes, you never played best,
Honestly,
but
that future of that team was looking bright.
your your front office, your owners, the ownership group are incompetent. Absolutely incompetent. When this podcast was last active, we were talking about how incompetent your ownership group was because they weren't paying their bills.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't pay rent for their arena, which they did not own. They couldn't get approved for a new site to build their own arena. They had to move into Mullet Arena at Arizona State University that housed only 3,500 people after the renovations. And recently, they wouldn't pay the hotel fees when they went out on the road.
That is.
It got to the point where Gary Bettman tried to keep this team alive in Arizona for so long
Mm-hmm.
that it took the NHLPA being like, nobody knows what's happening here, to be like, okay, we got to do something. They facilitate a sale. The owner of the Utah Jazz and the Arizona Coyotes are officially relocating to Salt Lake City. This is so bad.
Like, there's not many teams in the NHL that have not or have consistently been mediocre at best and have basically done nothing in their entire existence. Like, there's only a few teams you can even name, and it's a shame that it will join the list of teams that did nothing. There are not many of those. There's even less because you have the Thrashers. If you want to include Phoenix Coyotes, maybe, but they're technically a part of another team still.
Depresses me the most is that there's talks about in like 5 or 6 years that they could reactivate the franchise. The current ownership group still has the reactivation rate. Then you're just back to square one.
That is just, man.
Arizona has one of the sleeping best fan bases in hockey. The best goal scorer in the league is Hispanic and from Arizona. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. There is want for hockey there. But because the ownership are incompetent, they're losing their team.
Yeah.
And he makes out with a profit.
It's just,
he's making like $300 million on the sale.
That is definitely the worst news that you could get. Not even as an Arizona fan, but just in general. I know that at times it can be known as like a laughing stock, especially just because it's like, wow, look at this team that is not able to do anything because of management. Not the only team, I guess, technically, but it's like, this is what happens when you have terrible management. This is the worst that it can get, and sadly does come to that in the ending, that Arizona is now, or the team itself is now relocating. Arizona itself is not relocating. I think it's going to stay right where it is. But the team has to relocate because of how terrible the management is, and just how much it's so apparent that the team was being kept alive by Gary Bettman. And it's not a shot at any fans or anything. It's just that that's how bad the management was that the commissioner of the entire NHL, the guy who owns it's like, let me step in and help out these boys. Like, it's not what the fans deserve. Not at all. Oh, and we lost a man. He died in the war. But no, he did not deserve to have such a thing like that. We'll wait a few minutes, however, and we'll just talk. How's your day been? It's been good. It's been a blast, by the way, to be able to come back and kind of talk about the playoffs again. Talk about what's going on. I understand that now my team is being a part of it, and this is me not stalling to see if he comes back. He's coming back here shortly. We have the resurrection of the Arizona Coyotes coming back 5 years later. I don't know where it cut off, where you left off, but basically it's a shame that
I made a really short point, and then you were just like about to say something, and then you were just looking like this. So like,
hey, I'll be honest. In my end, the point was beautiful. It was made perfectly, crisply, and then I look over and see ... So, that's just the fun tech stuff that we have. It's not a beautiful Unhealthy Scratches podcast if our computer wasn't unhealthy. Or whatever is being used. I think it's an iPad.
It's a bummer for Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
The ownership group coming out of Utah has filed some trademark names that I will go through. The Utah Blizzard was one. Utah Venom. I don't really get that one, but it's one of them. The Utah Fury. The Utah HC Hockey Club, and then Utah Hockey Club. Which I think is hilarious.
It's like they started off with the best they had, and slowly but surely got worse over time.
Well, fans started coming out. It was like, you should call it the Utah Yeti or the Utah Yetis.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of fans were saying that. And just recently, like a day or two ago, they filed for it. And that's already become, because of such a fan swell, one of the front, which I think, in my personal opinion, is the best choice.
It's the best choice because it gives fans an option.
Plural. Utah Yetis.
That's the thing, right? Is that if you choose a team and the fans are able to choose it, how much more are they going to cheer for the team and invest in it?
Yeah,
like that's huge.
And like people are like, well, those names are all kind of weird. It's like they said on Steve Dago's podcast. Pretty much every sports team name is dumb in some capacity.
This is no shots. We can name a couple, honestly, like New York Islanders.
Like, let's not even leave out of Utah in the NBA. The Utah Jazz. They relocated their team from, I think, New Orleans, and just kept the name, even though there's no connotation to jazz music in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
They just kept it. It's like, what are you doing? But
hey, I'll shoot another team
nobody
down.
asks questions.
I'll shoot another team down for a name that kind of is funny, and it's not because... Oh, I'll just say it. Montreal Canadiens isn't the greatest name. And the reason why I say that is not because it's like Montreal's in Canada. All of Canada is the Montreal Canadiens.
Canada and French.
And honestly, a worse team name is the Maple Leafs. Hey, what's something known about Canada? Maple Leaf. Bang! That's our name.
Well,
no wonder they fall.
They're named after a certain regiment in the Canadian military.
It's like the same thing as it's like Rangers or Oilers even. It's like, I guess Oilers makes sense, but nah. Don't worry, you can shoot at my team, Canucks. I mean, what's a Canuck? And if you had to look it up,
Canadian.
You cheated.
It's Canadian.
Yeah. If you had to look it up, you cheated.
Canadians.
Yes. It's like, what are these names? A lot of them aren't great. Some of them are still pretty sick, though. We won't lie. But that's not the topic, and we're getting carried away. Utah!
Hopefully Yeti or Yetis.
Yeah, hopefully. Oh, actually, speaking of that, this is a Yeti right here. It's prophecy.
My God.
That's actually really funny. That's actually really funny.
Um, but yeah, I feel so bad for the Arizona fan
Mm-hmm.
base. Like Paul Bissonnette on like the hockey panel,
Mm-hmm.
like borderline tears talking about the team that took a shot on him when he was a perennial healthy scratch, and then picked him up off of waivers and played him for 5 years. Like
Mm-hmm. No, it's just
it's
all about that
so sad,
sucks. Oh
so sad.
man, if only the management could just get a grip. But too late now. Sure,
Too late now.
6 years time, we might see a resurgence. And
They
honestly,
should have been. This should have happened like 4 or 5 years ago. If
yeah,
we're being real,
it should have.
the
And
writing's been on the wall for
mm,
ages.
I mean, if there is a resurgence, there's one thing that is blatantly necessary. If there is going to be a
Different
resurgence,
owners,
yeah,
different owners.
no
Like,
questions
what do you
asked.
mean this
Get
guy
out.
has the reactivation rights? He, he's a
That's
terrible owner.
bro.
He can't pay his bills.
Bro, you want to know what it is? I'm not saying it's as brutal and not as bad. It's like the Washington Commanders type management. Not toxic in that sense, but just bad.
Yeah,
Just bad.
this is just
I'm
bad
not I'm
leadership
not saying that Dan
for
Schneider
different
is the
reasons,
same.
obviously,
Yes,
but
I'm not saying
bad.
he's the same as the owners of Arizona because no. No, at least the Arizona owners aren't, that toxic
Yeah,
and that controlling. But they're good. And it's sad.
it's so sad. Like,
And
they have such a cool history, like the original Jets.
mhm.
Shane Doan being one of the most widely regarded best leaders of an NHL team in the last like 20 years. Like,
Yep, big player for
man.
for Phoenix at the
And they
time.
have young players. Logan Cooley.
Mhm.
Uh, Clayton Keller is a star. Like, yeah, they don't
Who's
really
their
have great
goalie?
goaltending, but
Vamelka? Is
still.
that the goalie?
Pharrell Vamelka
Yeah.
and Connor Ingram, I think.
And honestly, again, their start to that season had me so excited. Like, I know that we didn't talk about like the beginning of the season. How excited I was to see teams like the Ducks and
Hmm.
the Coyotes up in a
Yeah,
position
making a
was
making a
so
step up.
exciting. And yeah,
And it
technically
didn't matter.
at the time Canucks too, because as much as they're like, wow, this team's
Hmm.
good. Last year happened, and the year before,
Yeah.
and the year before, and the year
And the
before.
year before.
Like a lot of teams were so shocking to see all of them up there, Philly included, I should say, because Philly sold and
Yeah.
then was up there. It's like so many teams started off good, and then to see that, man, it would be such a different story if Arizona made the playoffs. What a story!
I still think they would have got
Oh,
relocated.
I think they would have got relocated, but as one last hoorah, essentially, instead
Yeah.
of the ending that they received. It's just,
Instead of bowing out 1 point ahead of the Habs.
it's like,
Yeah.
just it's a shame, and hopefully we will see the Coyotes come back with a new owner for the third time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, third time's the charm. If it happens,
Yeah.
when it happens,
I
and
really do hope they get a new team, just not with that ownership.
mm-hmm.
Get somebody new.
It'll be something to
Learn from
see.
your mistakes.
Yeah, I will say I am excited to see Utah. They get a team finally. It's at the
I don't
cost
think
of
they
another.
would have gotten a team now if it wasn't for them relocating.
Mm-hmm.
I think he just capitalized. Like, Bettman was like, "Yeah, he's a good owner. You want a team? Sure."
I mean,
Because
if he
I could name
legitimately
at
is.
least, I could name at least 3 to 4 markets that would get a expansion team before that.
Mm-hmm. Because there's been a
I
few in talk, definitely.
Houston, Houston's a big market, and I feel like the success of the Stars, like, um, there's a lot of talks and a lot of rumblings about a team getting bought in Atlanta again.
Mm-hmm.
There's like at least 3 different ownership groups like buying for um, the official bid. Um, the Nordiques, come on, bring the Nordiques back. Like they're a market that's been pining and vying for a new team. Like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think New York needs another team. They don't have enough of them in there.
Well, Toronto could have another team.
Toronto wants
They're the
one, though.
biggest
Toronto
market in the
wanted one.
freaking
Toronto
league.
definitely wanted another one. I know that.
Uh, Toronto has the amount of demand for one, but MLSC will never let
Mm-hmm.
them.
So, always great to have a great sad note on it. Very,
But yeah,
very depressing and sad for all of
we
Arizona, especially.
we will end on a bit of a better note. We did mention these guys before,
Mm-hmm.
but this year has seen some of the wildest offensive outbursts I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about Arizona,
Very honestly, it's what a lot of the playoffs could be based off of, and I think a lot of people ended up with it because of how unbelievable the offense has been.
yeah, Connor McDavid, 100 assists. Nikita Kucherov, 100 assists. Austin Matthews, 69 goals. Yeah, we get it. Nice. You may as well just say he scored 70. Like, come
No,
on.
no, can't say it. He didn't do it. It's still impressive. It makes it no less impressive, other than it's a 1 goal difference. But
Like,
it's the feeling
just
of
a
it.
couple years ago, he scored 60, and it became the Leafs single season record goal scorer.
And the 12th
And
in
it's
history to
already
do it.
outdated.
Yeah, and was it the 12th to do it, right? The 12th player to hit 60 goals in a season?
Something like that.
And now he's the, he was almost the 8th to hit 70. Or 9th. I forget what it is. It's a really
No, it was
low
less
number.
than that.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
so
less.
low. Like, at this point, he's just smashing records. They all are,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh, speaking about that, I'll actually look up that record because it's funny.
That's what's funny. McDavid is the 4th player to ever do it. Like, Gretzky did it 11 times, sure. But
70
he's the 4th player to
goal
do it, and he's not even the only
scorer.
player because Kucherov goes around and does it. Just hilarious. But man, it's insane to know that 2 players got to 100 assists, and then Matthews comes with 69 goals, and so many players did their all-time best, which is usually expected, but to see the players that did it and to see some growth from players you wouldn't expect, and to watch players just dominate, because again, McDavid, like, as 100 assists, it's like, well, he got less points than last year. Yeah, he also, Edmonton sucked. And then suddenly they didn't. Like,
Now,
he did it in a shortened season, and then Ovechkin was awful. Comes back, scores another 30-goal season. Like, breaks a record there.
okay, so there's been 14 separate occurrences where somebody has scored 70 goals in a season.
Mm-hmm.
4 of them were Gretzky.
Yeah.
3 of them were Brett Hall. 2 of them were Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
And the only other ones to do it, Phil Esposito, Yari Curry, Bernie Nichols, Alexander McGillney, and Teemu Selanne in his rookie year.
Yeah.
But besides that, it was Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and Brett Hall, who combined for 4, 5, 6, 79 of those seasons.
My land.
The assist one is even rarer. It's like McDavid and Kucherov are like number 3 and 4.
Yeah, they were 3 and 4 because Gretzky
did it, and want to guess who the other person was? This blew my mind.
Oh man, I can't remember. I actually saw the list, and I actually cannot remember who it was.
Bobby Orr.
Yes.
As a defenseman, had 100 assists.
Good luck, good luck, Hughes, with that one.
Good luck, both of them.
Yeah, Makar and Hughes. Good luck. Honestly, your combined would do it, but
like,
we're not talking about that. No, it's just, oh my land, like, the records being not even just broken, but obliterated.
Yeah. Like, oh.
It's like, how can goalies even shine? How are plus minuses even alive for anyone that's not on the ice with those teams? It's like you'll see a team, it's like, oh look, our plus minus is 67. And then you'll see negatives on everybody.
This is easily the most scoring since the 80s. Why?
Definitely. Like, oh man, it's been exciting though. High octane, intense. Makes for a fun experience, and even though we've barely had any time in the playoffs so far, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see, especially
Unless you watched
since
that first Toronto game, which as a Habs fan, I was like,
I'm not
oof,
gonna
Maroon.
lie, I still enjoyed watching it as much as I didn't like the outcome, even though the outcome prediction shows or is leaning towards that team winning to begin with. I'm
Carolina
still really
Islanders game
excited
was
for
really.
it,
I'll
and
watch some of that.
I've enjoyed watching playoffs again,
Yeah.
especially when my team's in it. I know that
Yeah.
that definitely has a factor to do, but I just love
Who
playoff
knows
hockey.
when that'll happen next for me?
Tomorrow.
Imagine.
All I know is that
Um,
I'm excited now. Later tonight, I'm either going to be very excited or not excited.
hmm.
Because my team does play their first playoff game. If you don't include the bubble, then it was since 2015. If you include the bubble, then it's been 3 years. It's been a very long time, though. And I know that I get
Before
to be
people
hopeful
who
with it.
watch this says, dude, the Habs made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021. They didn't deserve to make it to the
It was the
playoffs.
same reason as the Canucks. They went in
If
on
it
that
wasn't for
5-round
the
series.
pandemic, they wouldn't have been close. 2020 and 2021.
It's
They did
just,
not deserve
oh,
to be there. Their last good shot, cup was 2014, and then Chris Kreider happened. And then Carey Price is never the same again.
yep. Oh my land, just it's been a while coming, and I know a
My
lot of these
Eastern
teams.
Finals was the bane of my team's existence.
Literally, yeah. And
Anyway,
mine actually.
and yours.
You jerk. No,
Sorry.
I mean this
Yeah.
season has been a lot of like you could name half the teams and they're like it makes sense why they're there, and you name the other half and it's like how the heck did you guys even make it?
Yeah.
And I know, and some of these teams are in the first place, some of these teams are in second. Like you got Jets, you got Canucks, you have you could maybe mention Kings, maybe not. You can mention Islanders, you can mention Capitals. Honestly, you might be able to mention Lightning and Bruins. Like there's so many
Yeah.
teams that you can mention that are like you can kind of see maybe a wild card spot, but some of them you're like nah, and then they made it. So
Like
it's gonna be
the
really fun.
Habs, to like make this full circle, besides 2014, has been perennially overperforming, and that's the sole reason the last regime ran as long as it did.
Mm-hmm.
Like their 100th year, they made it deep. The Yaroslav Halak. Then
Mm-hmm. Canucks legend, Halak, for one
then
season.
Mark Bergevin gets in. 2014 happens. They did deserve that. That was their best shot in a
Mm-hmm.
really long time. They get beat. They don't change things. And then every year after that was just, well, we made it to the playoffs, so we'll just retool, even though we're a garbage hockey team. Anyway,
No.
we're finally
Um,
trending up for the first time.
yes, and that's what's good. I will say as well in the playoffs though, it's not as crazy as last year. There are 4 teams in the playoffs that have not won a cup. 4 teams. Everyone else has, and shamefully, 2 of them face each other in the first round. You have Panthers. You have where'd the other team go? Oh yeah, there it is. You have Panthers, the only East team, and in the West you have Jets, you have Canucks and Predators. Everyone else has at least 1 cup, to the dismay of everyone. Vegas Golden Knights. You were in the season for like 7, and you've already done better than
7 years. Yep.
Wild and Canucks, which is awful, because it's wonderful. I really feel good about that stat. But yeah, no, those are the teams that have not won a cup. Everyone else has at least won, and it's not as intense as last year for teams that never won a cup. I think there were more, but doesn't undermine anything. It's going to be a fun playoffs, seeing these
Anything can
stacked
happen.
offensive teams. Anything can happen. We could be 100% wrong, and the
I
finals
probably
could be,
am.
and the finals could be Kings versus Capitals. It could happen.
Who knows? Yeah. That's everything.
That's everything.
You want to send her off, bud?
I can send her off. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been really fun to make another podcast again and kind of go through. As much as you might be cheering for your team, don't, because it's useless and it's all in vain because my team's there. But yes, I hope you guys do enjoy. Yes, I hope you guys do enjoy watching the playoffs and enjoy the podcast. And we will see you on the next one in our daily podcast.
We'll work at it.
We'll work on it. We'll get one to you sometime probably in the near future, either before the Stanley Cup Finals, most likely before, just previewing it, or after. Maybe even by round we'll get one. But we will see you in the next one. Signing off. Later.